Jacob Lund Fisker is the author of Early Retirement Extreme. I did a podcast with him 5 years ago. It's podcast 059. I looked it up just for this event. And I think it was one of my all-time best podcasts. Jacob is great. And we're going to explore. So what I'm going to do is one of those things where I'm going to read the chapter as we have it into the podcast / video thing. And we can stop with every paragraph to kind of discuss it and talk about it. Now, what we've done is we wrote it up, we polished it multiple times, and then we asked Jacob, because we mentioned Jacob in the chapter, we asked him to take a look and see what he thought. And he has a lot of feedback about the chapter. So we're going to plow through the chapter and give Jacob a chance to reply to every little spec that he likes. And that's it. Oh, okay. There he is. He's here. Jacob, talk.
Hey.
Oh, finally.
Oh, yes.
Just in the nick of time.
All righty. Do you want the camera on? Not.
Are you decent?
Yeah. Do you have clothes on?
Yeah. I just didn't clean up the room, though.
There you are. Okay.
All right. Thanks for bearing with us, Jacob.
Man,
apparently, with all of their software might, Google still hasn't figured it all out.
It's all going out live now.
Okay.
I think that there's a good chance that people are able to see you and say stuff. Bingo, says somebody. Somebody says hi. Well, there's you. It says, hey, this is Jacob, JF313131.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
So if I go on, I can't see the chat stream though. I think if I go on that, I might get the sound doubled over.
Don't look at it.
Oh yeah.
Good.
So
Okay, great.
What you do is you.
So yeah, just ignore that. Let Shawn be the chat master. Shawn will look at all the things that people are saying and tell us.
Okay.
I think it's important that I don't look at it, because if I look at it, I get distracted. And
exactly. Yeah.
So Jacob.
Well, it's technology.
I remember getting an email from you about 25 minutes ago, and you said, whatever you do during this thing, don't ask me to tell people about myself.
Yeah, more or less. If you one of those, please give me like a brief summary of everything you are and have done. In 2 seconds, I'll just sit like this.
So yeah, I kind of introduced you. I said, the guy wrote the book, Early Retirement Extreme, and I mentioned the podcast that we did like 5 years ago. I pointed out to people that I thought it was one of my best all-time podcasts.
I think it's like 8 years ago, actually.
Anyway. I looked. Okay, maybe it was. Maybe it was
a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a very long time ago. It's podcast number 059. If anybody wants to go on and look it up and listen to it. I know that after we recorded the podcast, that I know that you have forums talking about your book. Is it fair to say that, I mean, you're probably maybe the leader, if not one of the leaders of FIRE, Financial Independence, FIRE Early?
Maybe former leader, retired leader.
Retired leader.
Perfect.
No. I mean, I stopped actively blogging many years ago in 2011.
Okay.
So I'm sort of just hanging back. I retreated to my mountaintop where I sort of sit, and people were willing to sort of take the journey all the way up the mountain. I'll talk to them, but in general, I don't do much promotion anymore. Let's put it that way. So now, I mean, since we talked, I mean, when we talked the last time, there were like 5 FIRE blogs in the entire world, and now there are like hundreds, if not thousands. And at that point, I think we talked in 2010. Anyway, so I basically shut down in 2011-ish because I felt like I had said pretty much everything that I could say about it. I was just sort of repeating myself, and that was not really my thing. So, but since then, it's sort of taken other directions, and there are many more voices in this space now. So yeah.
Plus, once you're retired, doesn't that mean you get to be retired? You get to go do all the fun thing. It's like, sure, there's people with questions. Hopefully somebody will help them out because I'm retired.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like if you answer the same questions, like multiple times, it begins to sort of like grind on you. Anyway.
A little ways after our podcast, when you and I recorded that podcast, however long ago it was, I remember there was a bunch of stuff coming to my empire, and because every once in a while you look at the stats and be like, okay, how do I make things better? What do I do? And there was something that was like I was getting a lot of traffic to my stuff that I'd written about, where I called it the Wheaten Eco scale. And the only reason I called it the Wheaten Eco scale is because, like, could I have a scale, please? I just need to say it. And I realize it's not the ultimate everything scale. It's just
no. I disagree there. This is really like a super great tool. I mean, it explains everything when it comes to like trying to sort of convey some idea that's beyond what the sort of like the center of the bell curve is all about. I mean, this whole thing about when you go one level up, people are sort of inspired by you. If you go 2 levels up, you're like a little too extreme, and if you go 3 levels up, you're downright crazy. Going the other way, right? People behind you tend to get a little like 1 level behind. It's like, wow, man, they should try a little harder. If they only tried a little harder, whereas like 2 levels behind, well, these guys are like the problem with everything.
The thing that made me really happy about all this traffic I was getting, and it turned out to be from you, is that basically you took the framework that I laid out, which is, I called it the Wheaten Eco scale. So I wanted to talk about like, eco elements, environmentally friendly elements, those kinds of things. And so just to kind of give a quick summary, there are 11 levels numbered 0 to 10. And 0 has a majority of the population, like 6 billion people. And then level 1 is, I believe it's like a 1 billion. And then level 2 is 100 million. Then it's a order of magnitude smaller each time as you go up the levels. And then the key of this was to point out that, like, wherever you are on the scale, anybody that's 1 level up is cool. Anybody that's 2 levels up is like super cool. And anybody that's 3 levels up is crazy, and which is what you just said. But I'm kind of
right. And this is also exactly what I've experienced.
and then anybody who's behind you is fucking everything up, and you need to hit them with sticks or something. And these are observations. These are not like this is the way it ought to be. These are observations.
Right.
Once we embrace the observations, and it's like, okay, now if we want to get the idea across, here's kind of what you got to do. You got to recognize that there's going to be some people that appear to be crazy, but they might actually be advanced.
Yeah.
And then
if you go like back to the thing about whether I was the leader or whatever, what I eventually realized that I was too far removed, so I wouldn't reach that many. But sort of like since then, it sort of like filled out between like the normal consumer and ERE. So that people are sort of getting the message that like the biggest guy in the world right now is Mr. Money Mustache. And so people, like say mainstream consumers, get inspired by him, and then they hang around there, and then they see, okay, there's ERE now, that doesn't sound so extreme anymore, and then they move on. So I'm sort of like hiding out. I've been hiding out on the sidelines ever since. If that makes sense.
Well, I think
on the
that
top of the mountain.
when you take the 2 observations and you mash them together, then the message becomes like, okay, if there's somebody who isn't to your level yet, step 1 is don't hit them with sticks. That doesn't really help anything. Step 2 is that if you tell them about stuff that's 1 level up from them, they'll think it's cool. But if you tell them about stuff that's 3 levels up from them, they'll think it's crazy.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is that if you want this message to move forward on a large scale, what you got to do is you got to appeal to the people at level 0 and 1, and you got to tell them about stuff at level 2.
Exactly.
Maybe level 3.
That's
Don't
kind of
tell
like
them.
the lesson I learned the hard way, and it eventually decided to outsource.
And don't tell the general public about level 4 stuff.
Yeah.
They'll just think it's crazy and that you should be institutionalized for your own safety and the safety of the general public.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, but I kind of feel like, and this is part of where I was using the scale, was to be like, I want to talk about the level 5 to 7 stuff. That's where I really want to talk. And so I kind of feel like, therefore, and I put that into my podcast. I kind of feel like the podcast is the place where I can do that. And therefore, most of the population cannot look at my podcast. They can't listen to my podcast. They can't have anything to do with because they're just going to think it's crazy and horrible and monstrous. Mm-hmm. And so it's like that's part of the deal. But the cool thing is that you took my scale and you mashed it into fire or ERE, which is like
a fire Wheaten scale.
So thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Someone's pointing out F-bomb. Who used it? Was it me? I must have used an F-bomb.
It must have been you. I don't know. Someone said, did he say what I think he said? And I thought, well, what did you say that was controversial? I couldn't, because I'm trying to have two conversations at once here. One with you guys and one with the people in chat. And I said something that will make people happy.
I fully appreciate the full beauty of the English language. And so, and I mark all of my podcasts as explicit. And I wish to thank all the people that are so upset by F-bombs.
I can use the F word.
Yes, you can. Please do.
Thank you. I got in so much trouble once for doing that.
Yeah, no, not on my podcast. Go ahead, all you want. But the thing is that the people that choose to be offended by this language, I gotta say thank you so much for being offended. In fact, if you could be super duper offended, that's even better, because when those people get to be so extremely offended, all of the works of Robin Williams comes out about 30% funnier. and so it makes my life richer the more offended that they choose to be. And it's like when you try to do research on this particular word that they've chosen to be particularly offended by, it's kind of like there's zero behind it. There's nothing there. And it's kind of like this is clearly nothing more than just a choice.
It's a ritual.
It's an artistic choice. It's a life choice. Some of us choose to live a richer life, and some of us choose to be offended by that person living a richer life. And
it gives you something to do, right?
For some people. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we get some people that have contacted me to say that there's no reason in the world to use such language, and now they won't listen to my podcast anymore and stuff like that. And then for every one of those, I probably get 4 messages from people that say that they love this kind of thing and don't listen to those guys. So it's a choice. I hope that for whatever I say, that there will be 10 other podcasts out there where people are choosing a different language set, and they're conveying the message in what is in by their value set better. Let's move on. Jacob, you've read this chapter. Have you read any of the other chapters?
I read a bit of the introduction, but I don't know if that was the ultimate version or the most recent one. It was on the closed forum thread, not the Google Doc.
Okay.
And I've read the table of contents, which I should probably put in as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm hoping that because you and I invited you to come take a look at this chapter about a month ago, I think, and we got your feedback. But now that we're closing in on getting the last couple of chapters in there, I hope that you'll read the whole book and give me your idea of the whole book, because you are an author. I would love to get your feedback on everything. But for today, I also know that you have a lot of notes. I can see your notes on our chapter. And I'm going to read the chapter, the whole damn thing. And I'm willing to stop like every sentence, every paragraph, whatever you want to do, and get your feedback. Shawn has lots to say. But of course, It's been super polished by Shawn and I, and Shawn will be reading all of the chat stuff during this recording. And so we'll stop at any time for anything that anybody wants to stop for and say stuff that Shawn believes is stop worthy. Sound good?
Yeah, I'll try not to put my editor head pull it too far down, you know.
All right.
Metaphors.
So we have elected to name this chapter, and this is chapter 10, Radically Deviant Financial Strategies. Okay, first sentence. You have my permission to cackle wildly if you happen to implement any of these techniques. Okay, fair enough. We start off with the story of Gert, a millionaire life without $1 million. Over the decades, I have met people that live a magnificent life and have no job. I thought, why do I have to work and they don't? They must have a trust fund or something. Nope. The answer turns out to be stupidly simple. My attempts to share what I learned were futile until I came up with the story of Ferd and Gert. And so, Jacob and Shawn, I'm going to just quickly verify that this is true for the two of you. You have a thing in your head, or you witness something and you try to share it. And there's somebody who desperately wants the information, and they're asking for the information. And you try to tell them what you've observed and help them. And they're like, nope. Doesn't make any sense. What you're saying is stupid, doesn't exist. It's not true. You're a fucking liar. I can't talk to you anymore. Is it you guys have experienced this? True? I'm not the only one. All right. So I made up the story of Ferd and Gert, and I also got to give a shout out to my high school algebra 2 teacher, Miss Shannon. Her name is Sharon Shannon from La Grande, Oregon, and so she would do story problems in algebra 2, and they always starred Ferd and Gert.
Okay.
and I believe she said, I want to make it clear to all of you that whatever you go out and do with your lives, you are never allowed to use Ferd and Gert. And I tried to contact her to get permission. And I could never get in touch with her. So I don't know. So I'm kind of hoping that she finds out about this and gets pissed off enough to contact me. So this is the story of Ferd and Gert. Ferd works a job. It starts off sounding kind of like a story problem, doesn't it? Ferd works a job for 40 hours per week. And then he travels to this other country at 20 miles an hour. How long does it take him?
Yeah, right.
Ferd works a job for 40 hours per week. He spends about a half hour commuting each way.
I think probably the average Ferd probably spends more than that. I'm guessing, but your 20 miles an hour is like, I think right on the money there, right? I think it's like the national average of car speed is 18 miles an hour. If you divide how far people get in their cars divided by how much time, total divided by total, you get like the 18 miles an hour. So really, we could probably save like only need 2 gears for the average car, right? First and second, I would say.
We skipped over some introduction about you, but of course, what was your job before you retired?
Before I retired, the first time or the second time? Or the third time.
Well, the first time.
Yeah. Once upon a time, many years ago, I was a so-called computational nuclear astrophysicist. And
so then, when I mentioned math problem, then
that's not a problem.
You're like, oh, I'm in.
Yeah, right.
Okay, how many? How fast were they going? No, they weren't. I can prove it. So
I use graphs in my books. Let's put it that way.
So my mistake was to start talking about a math problem, and suddenly that activated that part of you that needs to solve that math problem. My mistake. I thought I was just being kind of funny because most people avoid math problems.
Yeah.
But okay. So I do think that I read somewhere that the average commute time is 25 minutes each way.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so, but I'm saying 30 minutes
Okay.
just to make the
enough.
math simple.
Yeah.
So Ferd works a job for 40 hours per week. He spends about a half hour commuting each way. So that is now effectively 45 hours per week. Ferd spends 10 hours per week on food stuff, driving to restaurants, waiting in line at restaurants, ordering, waiting, driving to grocery stores to get his favorite foods with the best price, shopping, waiting in line, etc. Between income, monthly expenses, and whatnot, Ferd has about $200 per month of disposable income, maybe $800 in the bank. Ferd spends nearly all of his disposable income on fun things. He's looking for entertainment and life substance. Ferd dreams of having $1 million so that he doesn't have to work anymore. If he had $1 million, he could buy a better house, a better car, awesome toys, and would no longer have to work at this sucky job or any sucky job. Ferd earns $40,000 per year now.
Which I might interject with some commentary.
I've got one sentence left.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading it on the screen here, so yeah. Okay.
Okay. In 20 years, he will have had several small raises, such that by the time 20 years have passed, he will have earned cumulatively $1 million. Okay, there you go. Now, you have something to add, Jacob.
Yeah. So, like, the first point is this is sort of like typical of Ferd thinking. When it comes to $1 million, it's thought of as something, if you have that, you could spend it on buying more stuff. And that is like in stark contrast to seeing that money as a capital asset, which you will come to later, I think, which is the way the next person is talking about it. The other point is, I think, so like in 20 years, people have cumulatively earned $1 million, but realistically probably also have spent $1 million, thus leaving him with nothing.
Right.
So, yes.
True.
Yeah.
No, and so I think my analysis is going to line up with yours.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're essentially describing the generic consumer, worker consumer who earns and buys and spends a lot of time doing that. Essentially a lifetime, right? I mean, it's similar to like so he has $200 per month in disposable income, or like leftovers after the needs, and all that is spent on consumption. It's not invested in anything. It's not, and the main consumer activities is like consuming TV, consuming movie tickets, consuming restaurant meals. There's no value add. There's no production. I think that's like a distinct difference there.
I want to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, just real quick, because you, Jacob, are on the phone, and I was just talking to Shawn about this just moments ago before we started this, and that is that I'm going to put it out there that a lot of people fear retirement because it's like at their jobs, their job defines who they are. Right. They have a function in the world, and they do something. And if they didn't have that anymore, it would be kind of like they would cease to exist.
Right.
Their days would be empty. They would be nobody. And what would they do with their time? Now, I want to take that and set that aside. I want to combine it with something else. And that is that they hear about things like carbon footprint. Now, before we get like 87 comments about how there's no such thing as carbon footprint stuff, right. I want to say that it's like, you know what? I can't walk outside and see the carbon footprint floating around in the atmosphere and say like, oh, it looks worse today than it did yesterday. It's invisible. I can't see it. And so I've I'm going to be, and then then there's the whole thing of like, we're all going to die. All human life is going to cease to exist in 37 years at the rate we're going. Scientists have proven it. Kiss your ass goodbye now. And for those of you that are my age, it's like, you're going to die of other shit before that.
Yeah. We're kind of lucky in that way.
You youngsters are kind of screwed.
I'm old enough too.
So, yeah. But the thing is that, you know, you hear about this, and then maybe Ferd is like on his commute, he's listening to the radio, and it's like, you're all gonna die unless you do something about your carbon footprint. So Ferd is listening to this, and he's like, oh, what should I do? Well, it's probably coming out of the tailpipe of my car, and yet I gotta go to work. I mean,
right.
And I kind of feel like your book and my book, which is also Shawn's book, our book, kind of is the same thing. Like we have other solutions for you. But part of it is like, I don't want your sucky solution of retirement or whatever, because if I stop working, I become a zero. I become nobody. And it's like, I'm not going to stop working. And so I kind of feel like that's for your book and my book, that's kind of that's part of it. We talk about that, and that's part of what's being presented is this kind of like, because I kind of feel like Ferd, and of course Ferd's an entirely fictional character, but I get to make up whatever I want that the Ferd thinks, and a lot of it being because, you know, I've been in those trenches, and I know, and I think all three of us have been in the trenches. I think almost everybody who's chatting away, look at all the words go by so fast. They've been in those trenches, so we all kind of get it. We all kind of understand. We know about this scenario, and for me, I have experienced things and I have seen things that are such that I don't want to go to a day job anymore. I've got so much other stuff I want to do.
Right. That's. I think that's a real problem. I mean, as you said, like a lot of people are defined by the structure they inhabit, so to speak. And if you take that structure away, they don't know who they are, what they want to do, etc., etc. I think that starts pretty early on. I think actually sort of like in a conspiracy-minded way almost, that is the main function of the educational system as it currently exists. People start out curious and internally motivated and creative, and as you sort of learn to, as you proceed through the educational system, you switch this internal framework to an external framework where you start working for rewards, for grades, and then later for job titles and higher salaries. And if you take that away, I mean, then eventually you essentially become really, really good at meeting, you know, mission statements, specific milestones and goals, and you've become really good at being sort of like a specific ant in a specific anthill. And if you take the anthill away from the ant, the ant is kind of nothing on its own, right? And that is really, really hard to sort of regain that internal motivation. So I have some understanding for people who do go back and are afraid to sort of leaving the matrix as is.
I want to propose that Ferd, based on what we just read, by the single paragraph for which we described Ferd's world, that I'm going to just throw into the mix something that's not in the books, but I'm going to say what Ferd wants more than anything at this point in his life is to be able to buy a jet ski.
Right.
He feels that if he could get a jet ski, he could go to the lake every other week in the summer and ride his jet ski, and that'll be the ultimate fulfillment for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the moment, he is saving up to get this jet ski, which, by the way, I'm going to further state that he's thinking he'll go every other week, maybe even every week throughout the summer to ride his jet ski around on the lake.
Probably not going to happen.
and that'll fill his soul, and he will then be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is eventually he does get that jet ski, and he is so happy with his purchase. He's so excited to have his jet ski, and yet he ends up riding it only twice each summer, for 3 summers before it breaks, and he can't be bothered to go get it fixed.
Yeah. I mean, that is sort of the that is how consumer society is in a sense set up. I mean, it's almost like a heroin addiction, right? You buy a product, you get this little jolt of happiness, or wherever that product gets shot in, I suppose, and it's temporary, right? I mean, there's this thing called the Easterlin paradox, where you measure essentially, if it's been done over multiple countries, multiple incomes, and if you have expenses or cost of living on one axis and happiness on the other, you'll see for each country that happiness sort of peaks out at about I think it's like 30% above the median income. So once you make more money than that, you're not gonna get any more happy. And I think this is actually what got me started on this whole thing, because I was just like what was Ferd in my early 20s. I mean, I had a part-time job, and I would save up money to buy some stupid technology, hi-fi system, computers, cameras, and then I would play with it for 3 months, and then I would get tired of and start researching the next one, save up, buy it. So savings were kind of like up, down. And eventually I kind of realized what is the end result of that? You end up with an attic full of like toys, essentially. And the only difference between people of like different incomes is that the toys are bigger or smaller, respectively. And it doesn't really make you happy to do that. It's sort of like a temporary feeling of happiness you get from buying that. But this is what can keep humans motivated. Most humans motivated for like 40 working years. That thing, right? You get a structure where you spend all day working, and it gives you an identity, and then it both dangles this little carrot of a jet ski, and then next maybe like a motocross cycle or something, or maybe you can like build a ultimate overlander, that kind of stuff as you get more and more. But if you take that away, there's for many people there's nothing.
So now, I want to throw it out there to the two of you, as well as to all the people that are in the chatty thing over here. I've defined Ferd, and I think Ferd is like, if he's not exactly the average employee at the average job, he's really close. I mean, if nothing else, Ferd is entirely plausible and probably is close enough to at least half of the working population of the United States. Does that seem reasonable to the two of you?
I say 90%.
Wow. Okay. John?
Agreed. I agree with Jacob.
Okay. All right. And then go ahead and let us know what people think that are on the chat thing over here. I think for the function of our book, that a big part of what we're focused on here is going to be about how Ferd, our book is about giving people recipes to build a better world in their backyard. And I think that Ferd is kind of like, he believes that there's not very much he can do about it. And I hope that the book paints a brilliant picture of lots of stuff you can do, including the retire early thing, complete with a package of joy, which is about what we're about to get into. But the focus being something I mentioned a little while ago about how Ferd believes that his tailpipe on his car is probably his personal footprint. And throughout the book, I want to point out that it's actually not the tailpipe on your car as much as you think it is. But he believes it's the tailpipe on his car, and that there's really nothing he can do about it because he has to go to work, and that most of his emissions are going to be coming from his daily commute. Mm-hmm. And so I want the book to point out that that's really not the case, but I believe Ferd believes that, and that there's nothing he can do about it. Therefore, we're all just simply going to die, and Ferd's making himself comfortable with that notion. Fair?
I think a lot of people have great faith in technological solutions. I think people who are sort of both aware and resigned to that, sort of like the how if current trends continue as they are, the sort of like the darker outcomes is maybe there'll be I've saw like serious people like James Lovelock, the guy behind the Gaia theory.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read somewhere that he projects there to be about 500 million people left by the end of this century. I'm a little bit more optimistic than that. I would say maybe 500 people by the end of the 22nd century. But I think again, what 90% would probably believe that technology will bail us out yet again. That's something that they are working on something. They being someone else, and so you do what I mean. You think about the tailpipe, CO2 is bad, but yeah, Elon Musk is working on electric cars, and electric cars will save us. I think that's sort of like the general attitude in the sort of like in Ferd world. Ferd's world.
It's funny you should say electric cars, because earlier today, before we recorded this podcast, we were working on chapter 32, and we actually mentioned Tesla electric cars, and it's like, and the bottom line is this. Is that, and this is part of chapter 32, the big finale for the whole book. And if you switch from electric heat to using a rocket mass heater, you reduce your carbon footprint as much as parking 7 cars. But if you switch from an internal combustion engine vehicle to an electric vehicle, then you have cut your carbon footprint tied to your vehicle in half.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, switching to from electric heat to a rocket mass heater has a 14 times greater impact on your carbon footprint than switching to an electric car. And so I think that, and this is the focus of this book is about how it's like real change is different from what you would think.
Yeah.
So now, along those lines, moving along with this chapter, let's now we've talked about Ferd, which is the normal, kind of like what most of us are used to, and now let's talk about Gert. And it's like, I believe in and I've talked about Gert in a previous podcast. I've written about Gert. I kind of, ever since I wrote about Gert, which I had the thoughts before, but I didn't seem to be able to express it properly. But ever since, it's like everything in my permaculture world is about Gert.
Mm-hmm.
Gert is the center of my universe at this time. So let's read about Gert. Gert has realized the permaculture dream. She lives on a few acres and eats the food that grows there. During the warmer months, she spends some time harvesting and preserving food. During a week or two in the fall, Gert is working a good 50 hours a week. But for most of the year, she is working less than 10 hours a week. Gert does spend about 10 hours a week making her meals. Usually it's something quick, but sometimes she makes something more elaborate. Neighbors sometimes buy some of Gert's excess food. Once a year, she'll help with a permaculture design for somebody. Gert has a little pickup, but she hasn't fired it up in 3 months. She has about $300 per month of disposable income and $4,000 in the bank. Gert has trouble spending this extra money. She's not sure of what to spend it on. It just sort of accumulates. Gert earns about $7,000 per year now. She intends to earn less money in future years. Over the next 20 years, Gert will have earned $100,000. Now, that's compared to the $1 million that Ferd earned.
Well, I mean, at least 140, right? Math check. Sorry. No, I know.
Gert's trying to earn less.
Oh, okay, so it's going.
Because the money's just building up, and she doesn't have anything to spend it on.
Yeah. I have a little bit the same problem.
If Gert had $1 million, what would she do with it? How would her life change? Since Gert is a fictitious person in my head, I hereby declare that her life would not change. If your life does not change if you have $1 million, then is it fair to say that you are living the life of a millionaire? Maybe we could call this being a permaculture millionaire. Okay, so now I see that there's a comment by Jacob on this point.
Yeah. So that is right. I mean, essentially that's the point where you've reached the point of abundance, right? Or if we put it sort of like in plant terms, you're like familiar with the Liebig's law of the minimum, right?
I'm not. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. All right. So that was some agricultural research from like 100 years ago, where they looked at how much input that various plants needed: potassium, NPK, sodium, potassium, whatever, right? Water, sunlight. And what was found that if you take away one of these essential inputs, then the plant will not grow at all. So there's like a minimum for each of them. As a corollary, if you keep adding more water but withhold all, say, potassium, that's not going to help you. That's not going to make the plant better, right? So I'm probably stretching the metaphor here right now, but in Gert's case, if you keep adding more money to that lifestyle, that's like adding a harmless fertilizer to a plant that already has enough, and so it does nothing. So the money just sits there and accumulates, and now what do you do with it? And that is, I mean, within, I think, the FIRE community, where so the FIRE millionaire, the people who oversave, it kind of becomes a question, because all that money just sits there and compounds. What do we actually do with it? Do we start a business? Do we give it to charity? What do we do with it? Because the money is actually in the FIRE community. There's a great post by Mr. Money Mustache where he compares it to, I think, what is it called? Water in the faucet. You have water on tap, essentially. Mm-hmm. We have water on tap, so we kind of take it for granted, right? And that means we don't really think about it when we spend it, but it's, on the other hand, not like we just let the water, we just let the tap be on all the time, so the water is just running out in the sink. It's just there. You don't think about it. So in that sense, if I circle back, that is living the life of a millionaire, even if you're not spending the actual money. It's the same with the air quality, oxygen in the air. It's something you take for granted. You don't think about it.
Now, I think we mentioned this earlier, but just to be clear, you said FIRE community, and so that's the financially independent, retire early.
Retired early, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are seeking FIRE. They've decided to, and it's basically exactly the same thing as ERE. But like the cool thing about ERE is ERE kind of describes an extreme on how you could retire early.
Yeah.
And then it's now that you're aware of it, now that this stuff's in your head, you can choose what you're going to do. You can choose between where you are and what's extreme and find where your comfort zone is. In fact, I would like to suggest that a person's going to like become aware of extreme, and they're going to say like, that's too extreme for me.
Right.
But I want something about 30% of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get to be 30% of the way there, they're like, oh, you know what? I can do 40% of the way there.
Right.
And then they can, next thing you know, by the time they retire, they find that they're about 80% of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it turned out it was easier to get to 80% than they originally thought.
Right. Yeah. That's also like a lot of the Ferd issues. Essentially, is that they're in a structure over here, right? And then there's another structure over here that they see described. And the hard thing is bridging these two things. So what Ferd will usually do is they'll find something over here, like, well, he doesn't drive a car or something, or he doesn't eat like meat or something, and therefore this entire thing is completely impossible. That's a very typical Ferd reaction. So in order to bridge this gap, you need like several structures. That's where the Wheaten levels come in. So you have like Wheaten level 0 structure here, which is like, say, Ferd. and you have like Ferd +1, and they can go from here to the next one, and then Ferd +2, and then as you go over, it's sort of like more of a continuous transition. It's not a quantum leap from this point to that point. You need multiple examples. So it's kind of like having a ladder, right, with different distances between the individual steps.
I've never heard the phrase before, a Wheaten level, and so I gotta say I like it.
What, is that not what you call them? That's what we call them.
I've always called them eco level, like eco.
No, we call the generalized scale.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, if that's ends up being my contribution to the world, after I'm dead, then I think that was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple. It's just little math, but of course you're a math guy, so of course you're grooving on it. All right. Hey, Shawn, is there anything to add at this point from yourself or from the people in the chat thing?
Having some good chats with the people in the chat.
I've seen a lot of familiar names go by. I saw Donkey in there. I saw Jocelyn in there. Jocelyn, of course, making links to stuff as we go.
Oh yeah, see, what with most people not having their real names, I often have trouble recognizing people. But yes, okay. Now I do see Donkey in there. Hello, Donkey.
All right. If you've come up with anything that is said in there that we should mash in, like some fascinating points, then let us know, okay?
Cool. Yeah, let's keep going. I think there'll be more to bring in once we get to some of the next sections later on. So.
Okay. All right. All right. Moving along. Maybe Gert should write a book and tell us and tell the world all this, but Gert doesn't feel like it. Gert is a humble woman and thinks nobody would want to hear that. And Gert's more of a reader than a writer anyways. Plus, there are already dozens of lovely permaculture books, so she doesn't feel like she needs to write another one. And plus, I think, so Shawn and I have now been working on this book for about 1 year. And we were just talking the other day about by the time that we finally get the books out to everybody, it'll have been 1.5 years. So I think Gert is wise at dodging this bullet.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been like 2.5 years writing mine.
And then when you started, how long did you think it was going to take you?
Well, yeah, mine was kind of weird because I was contacted by a publisher and they typically want this proposal. And I was like, oh, this is way too complicated. I'm just going to write the book instead. And then when I handed it in about 2 years later, they thought something like, well, that's an interesting story, but we don't think there's a market for that kind of stuff. And then I was like, well, screw you guys. I'm just going to like publish it myself. So like 6 months later, and that was like the horrible part. It's like step 1, write the book. Step 2 to 20, edit, copy, blah, blah, blah. Man, that was horrible. But yeah.
So I'm going to guess that what happened is that you'd already written this big blog full of awesome information. And then the publisher said, hey, why don't you take all that stuff and mash it into a book? And, and then you said, oh, thank you. And then you sat down and thought, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to take all my blog stuff and mash it into a book. It'll probably take me about. No. I'm way off. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was not how it happened. Actually, it was like I think 5 months after I started the blog. It was more like something, you have an interesting voice or something. You should write a book. Have you ever thought about writing a book? It's like this. Oh, this is way cool. Like I'm getting noticed. So sure. But everything. I basically put my best stuff into the book. In the sense that I had ideas, and if it was sort of like a dubious idea, I would put it on the blog as a tester to see but if I had something solid, I would write it in the book. So I've essentially taken nothing from the blog and mashed it into the book. The book is written as sort of from scratch. It's like the textbook. In a way, the book is like the textbook of ERE, and the blog is sort of like my personal journal. Thoughts I've had along the way. So yeah, it's not a blog to book job.
Well, So I guess the thing I was saying, I'm projecting it because that's kind of how Shawn and I's venture went. Is I kind of thought, oh, I've already written all this stuff. Maybe somebody like Shawn could go and gather up all the stuff and glue it all together, and then we'll put out a book. And it would take like 5 weeks. And I think I think it's true. I think we could have totally done it in 5 weeks. But the thing is that as we got like 3 weeks into it, I think we both kind of got to the idea of like, we could make this into something much better. Let's take extra time and let's do the much better thing. And so where we're at the finish line after all this time of like, we have polished every sentence and we have polished every paragraph and we have rearranged things I don't know how many times, and we have brought in experts to look at chapters, and then we've like the staff at permies.com has gone through it multiple times, and we have repolished and repolished and repolished, and I think we are getting really, really close to the finish line. But I think it's been worth it. Like I think what we started off with before would have been a novelty to maybe a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people. But I think what we're about to end up with here, I think, is something that I'm hoping will go much farther because of all the work we've put into it, and we're hoping it will truly make big change in the world. But all right, I'm going to go on and try and read some more. Ready? Maybe Gert should get more acres and sell more food. Market the food to get more per pound than what people pay at Whole Foods. Maybe get $20 per pound and have 5 or 6 people move on to her land and scale up. Set the pace for permaculture all over the world. Nah, that sounds like a lot of hard work and stress. Maybe Gert should teach some classes at her place so people can learn from her example. Gert doesn't feel like a teacher. Plus, to pull this off, she'd have to do advertising and marketing, which really isn't her thing.
You say advertising as if you don't like that word.
Well, and I think the thing is that there's like most people don't. It's like I don't know how many things that there's all these people that start these Kickstarters and they come to me and they ask for help. And the thing is like they just kind of think they're going to put their Kickstarter up on Kickstarter, and then money will come in, and they don't have to tell anybody about it. And really, that's what advertising is. You're going to at least tell one person. You should at least tell your mom, okay? You should probably support your Kickstarter, So it's like, and so I'm saying, so people contact me and I say, okay, can you at least create a thread at Permies about it? And I know we've probably got some of the Permies.com staff online on the chat thing right now, but it's like, it's amazing how many times we're contacted by people about, hey, can you tell your people about my Kickstarter? And it turns out they're not on the Dailyish email. They don't have an account at Permies. I don't even know how they heard about us. And why do they think that we'll tell, like, who do they think we are? And so can you just tell your people? And it's like, can you start by creating a thread at Permies? Because what we do is then we tell people about your thread. And it's like, they don't understand and they don't want it. It's like, can you just tell people? I don't want to create a thread on your stupid forums. Just tell people about my kids. Why do you have to be such a dick about this? So, all right. So I'm saying advertising like a dirty word. And it's like, I'm sorry. I think that 99% of the population is, they feel subjected to advertising, and they don't want it. And then if they come up with a product, then they want people to naturally find out about it without any advertising. That's the pure way to go. They don't even want their mom to find out about it unless you heard about it from somebody else. So it's my stuff's so good, and that's going to be in their part of the book about how like it's frustrating when you come up with a great solution, how people won't buy into it because they didn't get it spoon-fed to them through an advertising campaign or a massive PR program. Without the PR and the advertising, it doesn't exist. And I think rocket mass heaters are like one of the best examples of that. Why is it that the world is not currently absolutely bonkers about rocket mass heaters? I mean, rocket mass heaters can possibly single-handedly solve our carbon footprint problem, as well as cut your expenses for heat from perhaps thousands of dollars a month down to like $20 a month. And that's if you buy the wood. Okay. So moving right along, maybe Gert should go onto the internet and tell the world about her lifestyle. She tried that a couple of times and was told by a few dozen people that she's a lying monster and a shill. So she decided to not bring this stuff up on the internet anymore.
Also, why I stopped blogging.
Yeah! Yes! Jacob, your stuff is brilliant. It's magnificent. And yet, I cannot help but think that it comes back to the Wheaten Eco scale. If you, I'm going to say you're a level 9 person in your field. You're level 9 in the world of fire. And so, but if you go out and talk about it, somebody at level 1 or level 2 is going to say everything you're saying is a fucking lie and you're a shill for your book. And so stop fucking talking. We don't want to hear from you. And of course, it's always somebody who's anonymous and has contributed nothing to the field.
Yeah.
But after a while, it's kind of like, why should I bother helping people? I'm just sick of the hate. The people that I help don't even, they don't even fucking stand up for me. Maybe like 1 out of 10,000 people will stand up for me. But I'm just sick of the hate. Now, okay, that said, I am just wired in such a twisted, fucked up way, I can't seem to stop. And I think everybody who's in the chat thing, everybody who's hearing this podcast, everybody who's watching this thing, you know what I've been through. And I also believe anybody in the permaculture world gets 10 times more hate than in any other field because of reasons. And it's like, you know, and I've covered those in other podcasts, other presentations, other things. We don't need to get into that. Yeah. But Jacob, it warms my heart to hear you say how much people have hated on you so much for trying to help them that you kind of like, you know what, I just decided I don't need the hate anymore. I'm just not going to share.
Yeah. I mean, that's also like some people have thicker skins than others, and my skin is certainly not above average, I think. Or it's not it's not that thick. But I mean, since I mean, once you build out sort of like the entire Wheaten sphere, if we can call it that kind of new term, you know, like build the entire onion instead of just having someone far away, the number of haters go down significantly, right? Because, and also the number of defenders go up significantly as well, because there are more people who actually understand it. That's been my experience. I get very little hate these days compared to what it was like 10 years ago. Because there's now so many others who have helped promote these ideas. So
I kind of feel
in a sense it's getting defended at different levels, if that makes sense.
I think, like, for example, Gandhi is such a great example. The level of hate directed at Gandhi while he was Gandhi-ing was phenomenal.
Right.
You know, and he was referred to as a monster. He's a monster who's destroying the world. And so then I can also look at Sepp Holzer, who's clearly way ahead of me. See, do you see my little? I got that from Sepp. Sepp gave that to me. That's a cool thing. Yeah. He told me it's a metal. It's got a big rope on it, so I can hang it around my neck. But the stuff.
Hell, I mean, nobody ever gave me something like that.
Yeah, and
come on.
So I got this from Sepp, but of course Sepp Holzer's way out ahead of me on doing permaculture, and the nightmare that he's gone through is far worse than the crap I've gone through. And I mean, a woman wrote a book about what a monster he is. And then it was out there, and she worked the book for years, and it wasn't until there was a lawsuit, and the judge said, and she was a very wealthy woman, and the judge said, after the lawsuit, the judge said, okay, all your stuff, all your money, your property, your books, all of your everything now belongs to this guy Sepp Holzer, and you get to go spend 3 years in the pokey. Yeah. And so, but it's like the damage was basically done still, but hey, I guess he got all her stuff, and so that's nice, right? But still, I mean, imagine having that much hate. Like, that woman had to have some epic level of hate for, and it's like, if you're going to make a difference and do anything, that's just part of the package. You're just going to get it. And I totally respect your choice. Like, I've decided to step out of the limelight and let my past works be in the limelight. And when the haters come,
just sort of like hide in my little forum, that's make it essentially the way I think about it. You put down a moat instead of like putting down the bridge so people can walk in. They have to like put in some effort to actually get to the good stuff. Now that's how I've arranged my arrangements. So it just sounds like a different strategy.
So I do kind of feel like if you're going anyway, I respect your choice, and I agree with your concept of the moat instead of the bridge. And I kind of feel like, and I've also got another podcast out that is podcast 111. Why are so many of our permaculture leaders such dicks? Mm-hmm. And I basically put it forth that it's because we make them that way. And that's like the amount of, and I think that most people don't understand the amount of hate that is directed towards people that accomplish wonderful things.
Yeah, but imagine those working in climate science. I mean, actually, when I quit my physics job, I was getting involved in a nonprofit for sustainability, and one of the things were climate science. And I was thinking of, well, maybe I should start a new blog about climate science. But then already then you could kind of see how these guys were treated. It's like, okay, no, I can't do this.
All right, I'm going to finish up this section. I think the world has at least 1 million Gerts. Most might get an even easier life if they heard about permaculture, but they are, nonetheless, living the dream. Not only is Gert not angry at bad guys, she doesn't even know they exist. I am thinking of giving Ferd $1 million, but I think telling him about Gert might be of greater value. And I think that in that sentence, that's probably a core of what this book is all about.
Right.
Ferd, if I can tell Ferd about Gert, that the value of that bit of knowledge is greater than $1 million. And this is another thing too, is like if you think about it, there's all these people that are the preppers and the survivalists and stuff like this. But if you think about it, if Ferd is like, oh no, I'm worried about the coming zombie apocalypse, and it's like, okay, now I give Ferd $1 million. What does he do with it? How does he spend $1 million? Let's assume it's tax free. He gets $1 million, and it's like, okay, prepare for stuff. What are you gonna do? And of course, we've heard all the stories of people who win the lottery and they get like $20 million. And then a year later, they're destitute and miserable. They're worse off than before. And it's kind of like, if I give Ferd $1 million, is he gonna grow a garden? He probably isn't. He might, buy some kind of house that has a big bunker under it and stock it up with food. And he might buy a lot of guns or something like that, like for when the zombies come. But he's probably not going to grow a garden. Whereas, Gert is already got an extremely resilient lifestyle. Of course, I'm not sure what Gert's going to do about zombies, but they are, of course, a fictitious thing. But
water them and eat them like plants.
so, I mean, basically, if the world has financial collapse, Gert probably won't even notice. If the world goes through, a bunch of different kinds of collapse scenarios, Gert would probably be utterly unaware. Like nothing will change for Gert, other than what she might visit with her neighbors about, and that'll be the extent of it. And so, I want to ask the two of you, what is your opinion of this last sentence? Is giving Ferd $1 million better than giving Ferd knowledge about Gert?
Do you want
to? So Jacob, what do you? If you could give your book and my book to Ferd, do you think that might do more for him? Like Ferd will end up being happier than if we gave him $1 million.
Some will, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
I think a maybe.
I mean, $1 million is not really gonna do anything. I mean, the only thing you can do with money is to spend it on stuff. You can buy things. You can buy things with it, but you can't learn things with it. You can't start a garden with $1 million. I mean, you could hire someone to start a garden for you, but it requires additional input, right? To actually start a garden, it requires the knowledge to start a garden, which is fairly complex in nature. $1 million is not going to do that for you.
Well, okay, so we give Ferd $1 million.
I'm not really answering your question.
If we give Ferd $1 million, first thing he's going to do is he's going to go tell his boss to take a flying fuck through a rolling donut. So he got that out of the way. He quit his job. The next thing he's going to do is he's going to pay off all his debts. So now he doesn't have any debt anymore. And I think next he's going to buy a house, property. He's going to buy stuff that will hopefully prepare him for the future. Now, of course, he'll probably not even think of growing a garden.
Right. I mean, essentially, he has money, so he's going to be able to solve his financial problems, but he's not going to be able to solve any other problem he might have. And that's sort of like the real kicker here, because we live in a society where money is like the sole measure of pretty much everything.
But so now he's been fantasizing about that thing, that ski thing, that sit and ski.
The jet ski, yeah.
Jet ski. He's been fantasizing about that jet ski for years now. So he's definitely buying the jet ski because he's got his eye on the one that he wants to buy. But screw that. He's also going to get a boat. He's going to get a big truck to pull the boat around. And next thing you know, he's going to do the same thing that the lottery winners do. And that is he's going to end up in insane debt and without a job.
He's essentially, I mean, character is destiny, right? In a way. So if you have this kind of like Ernie Spendy character and you get more money, it's just going to be sort of like a pulse contribution, and it's going to fade back to the character again. And when we lived in California, there were all these like high income dentists and lawyers riding around on very fancy road bikes costing like $8,000, $12,000, going maybe like at 15 miles an hour. Totally bad. I mean, that's pretty slow on a road bike. And that's kind of like what tends to happen. You try to buy your speed, and these guys were like maybe 40 pounds overweight, so they spent an additional, say, $6,000 to make the bicycle they're on, like 3 pounds lighter, because you're not. And if say you give such a dentist or whatever, like people who have more money than common sense, essentially, they're not the return on investment in terms of what they're actually doing with this going fast on a bicycle. It's misallocated, that money. That the problem is not the lack of money. The problem is the lack of time, effort, training. Once upon a time, I mean, when I was blogging, there was always these kind of fun blog posts. What would I do with $1 million? So I tried writing a post like that, and kind of came down to the Gert situation. Was like, after I'd spent, I don't know how much it was, like $20,000. I literally had no idea what I would spend the rest on. Like, but you know, I've already bought everything. I just lack the imagination to. I mean, I could always, of course, always think of stupid things like, you know, like paying someone $999,000, 800 for a rock, right? But realistically, spending $1 million is sort of like beyond my structure, so to speak, because I just don't think of money as it's not a critical resource for me anymore.
And that's a proper retirement right there.
Yeah.
Okay, Shawn, your turn.
Okay, this sentence. I'm thinking of giving Ferd $1 million, but I think telling him about Gert might be of greater value. I agree with what we said here. Obviously, otherwise I would have yelled at you and said we need to change it. So, yeah, I think, like kind of like Jacob was saying, it feels like if you go for the $1 million, it's like, okay, then like Ferd's just going to waste the $1 million. And I think it's easy like to say as someone who knows many. Well, yeah, I mean, I've written this book with you. It's like I know these things already. So for me, it's easy to say, oh, give me the $1 million because I already have the rest of it. So with both combined, cool. That'd be fun. But if it's A or B and you don't already have B, then I'm going to choose B. Because I think that the knowledge that comes with the Gert package is much more reliable than, it's much more reliable.
The problem, the main issue here is that they don't translate well into each other. You can't just like write a check for $1 million and automatically have all this installed in your head. I mean, you can read the book, right? But you still have to work through it and think about it a lot before it actually becomes second nature. So what a book does is that it presents this like, okay, there's an alternative here, but it's not like you put like a jack in your head and it's automatically downloaded. It's like getting like a black belt in karate or something. You can't just like read a book about it. You have to practice it for many years.
Right.
And the book will show you where to go and kind of like the structure of how to get there. But it's not a substitution for the skills. If you could actually sort of like download the skills like that, if that was a technological possibility, then I personally would easily be able to spend $1 million. But that is not the case. So in a sense, the limiting factor for me is time and mental energy to do things,
absolutely,
not money.
Those two things for me.
I'm reading a thing off of the chat thing. I want to share it real quick. It's like a very different tack for just a moment. A fellow named Simon Scott wrote, "Paul, at least you're still alive, brother. So many activists have been rubbed out." And there's been a lot of people that I've talked to where it's like people that they know have mysteriously died. And died under mysterious circumstances. And so it's kind of like, well, that's one way. If you're a corporate agenda is something where these guys are kind of in the way, then they, it's apparently maybe pretty cheap to bump them out. I mean, we can kind of see like all kinds of movies about this, and I've always kind of thought that if I pursue this path, that my lifespan will be cut, artificially short. And let's not forget.
Let's get the book out before you take.
So, fortunately, lots of copies of the book are around. But anyway, a great example is Paul Stamets, and there have been many attempts on his life so far. It's very scary to hear him tell these stories. So it's like this is artificial. This isn't natural. This is artificial. So yeah, I'm glad that this got brought up. And yet we'll keep trying. I think that myself, I'm not viewed as a threat because my stuff seems too crazy. And I think that kind of comes to the stuff of like, oh, I'm talking about level 5 to level 7 stuff. So it just seems crazy to people, the majority of the public.
The motivational speaker living in a van down by the river, right? that's what I used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, almost literally.
I kind of hope that when a person starts traveling down permaculture road and they get to like level 3 or level 4, that at that point my podcasts then become interesting, whereas they wouldn't have been before. So I kind of feel I tell myself that that's my niche is, you know, and so I keep, so rather than trying to put stuff out for the level 0, level 1, level 2 people, I feel like I am powerfully compelled to do level 5, level 7 stuff.
No,
and that's where
I mean, it's also the so-called curse of knowledge. Once you know enough, it becomes very hard to essentially teach the problems at a much earlier level. That's the same reason why you don't have like university professors teaching first grade math, because they simply cannot comprehend the problems that a first grader might have with addition, because it's been so long since. And I feel that with a lot of this personal finance and frugality stuff. Like I just don't know how to present it well. From like I was like recently on a Danish TV documentary, and sort of like the fallout of that was that I got contacted by various people who had heard like this sounds like a great idea, right? How do I get started? And I was like, didn't really, you know, like I don't really know anymore, right? I mean, what do I tell them? Because well, I mean, Wheaten levels, right? Yeah.
I don't know. I think your book does really good at people wanting to get started.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it certainly requires you to have certain foundations already in place.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's put it that way.
I mean, if you're a senior in high school, you're thinking about college and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I suppose that if they look at your book, it's going to seem stupid, because where's the part where they become a rock star, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't see the rock star chapter and the fame and glory chapter. I don't get it. This book is dumb. It's for idiots. You know.
No, it's actually.
I think
I'd say it's actually kind of like the other way around. I mean, the bad reviews I get is like, this is way too complicated. This guy's overcomplicating things, and they really. I mean, the average. I mean, the nonfiction books. The average nonfiction book that's published. When I say average, I mean most of them. If you go through a publishing house, they'll want to edit it down to about a 6th grade reading level. And then that is essentially because that's where most readers are in terms of their reading comprehension.
I kind of feel like your book is good for somebody who has been in the workforce for like 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you haven't been in the workforce for 3 years, then your book doesn't make any sense. So I think you've got to get to like just of being in the workforce, you got to get up to level 3 of being in the workforce before your book means anything. And so I think that if somebody is 17 years old and they're a senior in high school, they haven't been in the workforce yet.
I haven't really noticed that effect as such. I mean, the youngest one I ever had was, I think it was like a 7th grader and 8th grader actually did a school project on the book.
Oh,
and we have a bunch of high schoolers who are also sort of interested in. I mean, don't underestimate the smartphone generation. I mean,
I stand corrected.
Yeah. It's I mean, the book is obviously, I mean, when I wrote it, right, I mean, it was still my target group was essentially like my 30 to 50 core readers on the blog, and I wanted to sort of get my philosophy down and in essentially not a manifest, but sort of like a contained theory system. And so I wrote it mainly for them, and these were kind of highly educated types. So the language is accordingly. It kind of reads as a PhD thesis without the citations, or without that work, you know. Also because it's hard to find stuff to cite when you're sort of like out in the outfield. But then it just kind of took off after that. But yeah, you definitely need to have a high level of reading comprehension, etc. Which sort of like means you have to be somewhat you have to be one of the sharper knives in the drawer. I think you have some kind of cartoon about there's a goldfish and then there's Einstein, I think, right? So it's closer to Einstein than the goldfish.
That's the graphic. It says something like
you must be
this smart to ride the ride.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and the arrow is really close to the goldfish.
Yeah,
like,
so with ERE, it's
for much.
Yeah,
but there is a bar.
Yeah, right.
And then of course the reason why you're reading this is you didn't make the bar.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on with the chapter then. Okay.
Yeah,
Shawn,
if I may interject a little. So what you actually described with Gert there resembles the story of the Mexican fisherman. So for those who don't know that one, can look it up. Mexican fisherman. I don't know if it's in the book actually. It could be.
No, it's not in the book. So
okay.
That's cool. People can go check that out too.
Yeah.
All right, Shawn, do you got anything to add at this point before we move along?
Okay. Let's keep going. We've got a lot of chapter left here yet. So
yeah, we're about halfway through the chapter, I think. Now this next piece has to do with basically it's ERE before ERE, or at least my exposure to it. And so I'm calling this section of the book Owning a Home Without Groveling to a Bank. You have my permission to make rude gestures in the general direction of any bank if you implement any of these techniques. When hearing about Gert for the first time, the most common response is, how did she get the land? One possible approach of achieving Gerthood is well documented in Rob Roy's book, Mortgage Free. To sum up Rob's entire book in one paragraph, keep working your day job, significantly reduce your expenses, and save up a big chunk of money. Use this money to buy your land. Yes, with cash. Next, build a shack on your land and move in. You won't have to pay rent somewhere else, and so you'll have extra money to save up. While you're living in the shack, use the money you've been saving and your new shack building skills to build a small house. Over the next number of years, keep adding on to and remodeling the house as your needs and budget allow until it becomes your dream home. Now you have your dream home on your own land and no mortgage. Hooray! This strategy can definitely work, but living in a shack for a year doesn't really jive with a lot of people. Fair enough. Have no fear. For those of you not interested in the shack lifestyle, we'll be introducing a luxury model at the end of the chapter. Oh, I'm looking forward to the end of the chapter. I can't remember what I wrote. But okay.
We actually, I think we talked about the Rob Roy book in the previous podcast. If people want to look that one up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've got a podcast with Rob Roy about the Rob Roy.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good too. Yeah. So, all right. The next section in the chapter is called Early Retirement Extreme. You may have heard of it. So another excellent example of how one might achieve Gerthood is what Jacob Lund Fisker did. Once upon a time, and I gotta tell you, Jacob wanted me to rephrase all of this to be far more humble towards Jacob. But okay, and so I decided, screw him. I can say whatever I want. It's my book. So
well, I might sue you for all your money then.
Once upon a time, Jacob worked as a nuclear astrophysicist. One day, he wanted to go out and play, but careers typically don't allow that on a weekday. So rather than spend the rest of his life doing what he was trained to do, he plotted and schemed a way to escape. I can see all these notes in here about you can't say that. It's like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's not exactly how it happened. I mean, it was a lot less scheming than that. It just kind of happened along the way. That's your book.
I'm reading here. You be quiet. He ended up retiring at the age of 33. So very clever. Leading up to his retirement, Jacob created the blog, book, and forum called Early Retirement Extreme, ERE, to share his ideas and philosophies with others on how to achieve financial independence and retire early. Thousands of people shared online about their success with Jacob's strategies. In a nutshell, Jacob begs you to consider the conventional retirement path and then consider an extreme early retirement scenario. And then consider something in between that would be best for you. Even more, you might be willing to try a path where you retire in 10 years, but after a few months, perhaps after an especially comical day at work, you might be willing to try something more extreme. It seems that a lot of people that start on this path end up retiring in 3 years. Now, I got to stop here at this point because I suspect that Jacob is about to explode with 47 things he has to say about what I've just read.
It is true that people tend to start out slow and then ramp up. Or if they might have been saving, say, 40 or 50% for a long time, and then they discover this stuff and say, well, wow, we can do 70% to 80%. And that will significantly decrease the time it takes for you to become financially independent. It's a very and surprisingly non-linear process. Like saving 80% is not 4 times better than saving 20%. It's much faster than that. If you save 50% of your after-tax income, you can expect to become, and you start with nothing, right? You can expect to become financially independent in about 17 years. So if you start working at 23, say, you will be financially independent at 40. But if you save 80%, it'll only take you 6 years. So you'll be done by 29. So that's only a 30% increase in savings rate. So yeah.
All right, let me finish reading this section, which is all about you. That way, then you can start to tell me about how I got it all wrong, and all this buffet of notes all packed up on this chapter that you've written. Okay, a quick peek at what most people, what most consider as the most extreme path. Continue working a normal job, but live so frugally that you're squirreling away 75% of your income. Try to get your living expenses under $500 per month. Yes, this might seem really low, but he outlines how it can be done. Invest that extra coin. When you have saved enough, when you have enough saved, you can then leave the rat race behind and spend the rest of your life in happy retirement. As a bonus, you might develop some hobbies that accidentally produce a bit more income. Oops. Jacob is brilliant. I wish that I had learned of this when I was young. That said, while these techniques may work, the idea of living extremely frugally doesn't really seem like it fits the idea of a more luxurious life for a lot of people. Don't worry, we'll get to a more luxurious approach soon. All right. So, Jacob, you've read ahead. You know what we're going to talk about next. But
right.
Is there anything more to add to this section, which is all about you?
Yeah, I mean, especially the thing about being extremely frugal. So a lot of people would see frugality, approach this from, again, where you start over here and then they look at what's over here. And then they see this as being a very cut down version of what they used to. You have to give this up, you have to give that up. And eventually you are sacrificing, you make extreme sacrifices in order to do that. So that's not entirely accurate. That's not the best way to see it, approach the whole problem either. The better way is to look at needs and wants. And the point is to find there's a lot of things in this world, if you're in a given structure where you like go to work every day and have a house, a mansion, or whatever, or a house and a car and payments, etc., that you take for granted, and you say those are needs. I need a cell phone. I need a car for myself. I need a car for my wife. I need a car for my teenager, etc., etc., etc. The better way is to start from zero and then add up and say, what do I get? And then stop once you have enough. And you will often, if you're not used to starting from up here, you'll find that enough actually happens a lot lower than what you're used to. So that's point one. And it's a lot easier if you start young than if you start old. Essentially, if you're already settled with tons of obligations and consumer behaviors, it's a lot harder to take those away than if you start like from scratch and just build it up. Saying, well, okay, I need a roof, and I need 3 sets of clothes or whatever, and I need the heat to be sufficiently high, but it doesn't need to be like 85 or whatever the average temperature is, sort of in other houses these days. The other, I mean, it's 56 degrees in here, Fahrenheit. The other thing is, of course, over the past 2 generations or so, we have gone away from this idea of doing things for ourselves. I mean, if you go back to my grandparents and their parents, they did not shop for their groceries. They grew them, right? They could make their own soap if they needed a shovel or something. They would essentially buy the blade and put their own handle in. They could do lots of different things. But I mean, we grew up in a system where essentially all we learn in terms of satisfying any need or want we have is that there's only one way to do it, and that is to get a so-called good job, meaning it pays money reliably. And then we know how to spend it on different services and products. And that means that my generation and those younger than me, and I say also my parents' generation, the boomer generation, there's a lot of things that we never learned, and there's a fairly long learning curve of replacing all these things we buy with smarter solutions for ourselves. So, I mean, when I started on this whole approach, of course, I didn't know anything either. So initially, I was also kind of sacrificing everything. But you know, taking this away and not living without that, and giving that up. But eventually, over years, I mean, decade or so, I replaced that, learned how to do this, learned how to do that. So, I mean, the way to see that is simply that we spend money much more efficiently than the average, about 4 times as efficiently as the average consumer. We live currently in a 2-story house, you know, 1,000 square foot. That's the smallest we could actually get in Chicago. But the only things we really spend on are these so-called intermediate goods, you know, like real estate tax and insurance and various shit we don't really get any value out of, but we're sort of like legally obligated to pay for. The biggest expense post outside of like mandatory bullshit expenses is food. At $1,800 a year. Otherwise, everything else is, I mean, desk I'm sitting here is something I've made. We renovated our bathroom for $50. I built the cabinets myself out of scrap wood. But that's not something you learn from day 1 to day 2. So I mean, it's very hard. It's hard to believe that it's possible to spend so little, or to sort of like spend money so efficiently. When you're used to just paying for stuff.
Let's suppose you've got like $10 million in the bank, and maybe it's not even in the bank. Maybe it's in a bunch of it's in investments, and some's under the mattress. You know, whatever. But you've got like $10 million, and then you've got the job of doing exactly what you said, like a little bit of remodel in the bathroom. We want some new cabinets in the bathroom. And it's like, well, you could hire a guy. You got the money to do it. You know, you could hire a guy to come and do it. And then in fact, you got to this point of having the $10 million safety net by living frugally at some point in your past. But then in order to get there, you built some skills on how to be relatively self-sustaining and take care of yourself.
Right. Self-reliant, I think. Yeah.
Self-reliant, yeah. And so then when the time came that you want to put some cabinets in there, it's kind of like, well, I could hire a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to do it the way I want to do it.
Right.
And if I do it, and then I put some nicks in it, and I do a little this and a little that the way I like to do it because I've done it before.
Yeah, this is like wasabi or something.
Then it's like I feel like there's a certain amount of delicious that I end up with at the end of the week that I can look back and I can see this thing that I've done, and it's like I've done a thing that makes my house now more of a home.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a pleasure in being able to do this. A certain satisfaction. Yeah. What's important, I would say, is if you draw a scale where you do nothing for yourself, and then when people do everything for you, I mean, consumers tend to be closer to have someone else do it for you. But it's not like you hire a dentist to go brush your teeth, right? I mean, you can do that yourself. You don't have toilet assistants either, or to wipe your asses. You don't have a personal driver. You can do that on your own. But most other things for your standard consumer unit, it's bought. But if we move that back a little, then what my point is that a lot of the stuff that one would normally pay for is highly inefficient. You pay for it at very inefficient levels. Like for instance, if you have a flat tire on your bicycle, then I did some bicycle repair when I was living in California, and apparently the going rate, if you bring that to the local bike shop, is like $15 to patch a flat tire. And there were like literally people who were giving away their Walmart bicycles for free because they were broken, which ultimately turned out they would have a flat tire. So I actually picked these bicycles up for free. And then I've had arguments with people, typically high-income earners, saying like, well, yeah, I'm a fancy tech software engineer or something, and I make like $100 an hour, blah, 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 right? So it's due to the law of comparative advantage, it's better for me to, pay someone else to do it. But I mean, in many cases, they haven't really done the math there, because $15 for a flat tire that takes 5 minutes to fix, that's like 15 times 12 is $180 an hour for fixing your own flat. So obviously you should not pay someone to fix that flat.
The other thing is you're paying $15 to have them fix the flat, but you got to get the bike to them.
Yeah.
Wait for them to get around to it.
Right.
Then you got to take the bike back, and it just seems like
it's just highly inefficient. Yeah.
Okay, going back to the thing about your bathroom. And some modifications that you did with some cabinets in there.
Yeah.
You could hire a guy to go and do that, and it's like, and then you could probably pay for whatever it was you did. Let's say you had to pay $600 to get these cabinets put in.
That would be lucky, I think.
Okay, maybe $1,000 for whatever it was that you did,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like dealing with the person and parting with all that money. You could totally do that. But it's like it just turns out to be that now that you are a wealthier person in respect to experiences and knowledge, that it turns out you could just do it yourself,
right?
For less time than it takes to talk to the guy about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, let alone part with $1,000 or whatever it is. And so
it's also not just in dollars, but also in mental energy, having to find someone who will actually show up, all that stuff, and telling them what you want. It's all kind of different resources. Yeah.
Does it properly, and then when they don't do it properly, finding another person who shows up and does actually do it properly, and at the end of the day, you're doing most of it yourself anyways.
Right,
so.
Or doesn't do it properly, but in a different way of improper.
Creatively improper. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on with the chapter.
I found that the main for small, easy jobs, intermediate jobs is probably more accurate. Biggest difference between a professional and a sort of like a do-it-yourselfer with enough time and YouTube is speed. Like they can do it 4 times faster than you, but they do about just as good as jobs you can do if you're careful in what you're doing.
And you care, you give a shit about what you're
doing. Right.
Yeah. I think that 90% of any job is give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, it's amazing how somebody will be like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fix this thing, but they don't really give a shit. It's like their YouTube video happened to be the Red Green Show. And so there we just wrapped it up in duct tape. It's good enough. Yeah. But all right, let's move on with the book, with the chapter in the book. And so this next section of this chapter is called Give a Gift to Your Future Self with Passive Income Streams.
I'm going to leave for 2 minutes while you read this.
All right, good. Shawn, I need you to not leave.
I'm still here.
Okay, we got a lot of background noise. Hopefully we don't get any more background noise from Jacob while he's away. But okay, so this section is called Give a Gift to Your Future Self with Passive Income Streams. All right, so Shawn, we've got something that we set aside. It's so what I did is I put a poll out to my Patreon peeps from my podcast Patreon peeps, and they all came through, and so we've got some results. What are the numbers here? What's the question first?
The question on the survey. Oh, it wasn't a question. It said, check the boxes for your Vibaruni on residual income streams. So the options.
I made you say Vibaruni.
You did, yeah. That's all right. At least you admitted it. So everyone knows it's you're doing. So the survey says, I think that residual income streams are not a fit for me. 2 votes. I want to do residual income streams, but I have not yet figured out which one is for me. 11 votes. I tried some residual income streams and it didn't seem to work. 2 votes. I tried some residual income streams and it worked really great. 1 vote. What is this residual income streams you speak of? 1 vote.
All right.
So I think the most fascinating part on that, we had 17 people vote. And this was a survey of Paul's Patreon people. The most fascinating thing is there's 11 of the 17 people said, I want to do this, but I just haven't figured out what I want to do yet.
Okay. So a lot of people, so the key is that the biggest one by far is that they haven't figured out what is a good residual income stream. And as Shawn pointed out, when I posted this, I should not have said residual income stream, but I should have said passive income stream. And sorry, that's a bad habit of mine, which in the book we've corrected. It's all about passive income streams. And so, and we are going to talk about some in the book. We're gonna list off some stuff, but it's, I mean, this is just a section in a chapter of the book. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we have a whole forum dedicated to helping you to figure out what's your thing. And I kind of feel like one of the things that every time I hear somebody say, I haven't really figured out what I want to do yet, I kind of feel like one of the things that no one has done that I know of yet is go out and figure out how Google AdWords works, connect Google AdWords to something of mine for which I have a 50% affiliate fee. So that means that every time an item is sold, you get half of the gross income. So like if it's $100, they're going to buy a thing from me for $100. Like the permaculture and the PDC ATC videos, the 177 hours, that's currently available for $100 exactly. And so then if you made a link to that with our affiliate junk, PayPal takes out I think they take out like $3 or $3.50 or something like that. And then you'll get $50. And then that means I get something like $46. So you actually get paid more than me if you do this. And no one has done that yet. And I kind of feel like, I bet you could probably get something set up in under an hour of just winging it and set it up crazy cheap, and it'll probably start to have a return. It won't take you. It won't take. So then the next question is, well, Paul, why haven't you done it? Well, I've been working on this book. See, instead of doing that, I'm trying to make more stuff for you guys to make your passive income streams with. But the thing is, if you set it up, and then it's costing you like I don't know, let's say it's costing you $50 a month for the thing, but you're making $500 a month from the affiliate fee. I think you'll find that it's worth it. So then you just leave it running forever, and you don't have to do anything else. There you go. That's a passive income stream. And all right. So I'm going to read the chapter, which I think it starts off giving a kick in the nuts to Jacob. And so
Sorry,
Jacob,
buddy.
yeah, and Jacob, of course, will have lots to say here in a moment. Okay, but so give a gift to your future self with passive income streams. The stumble I experience with Jacob's ERE is the investing part. It smells a lot like gambling to me. And since I am not a master of this type of gambling, I suspect that I will be on the losing end of the gamble while experts fleece my monies. And I'm left with nothing but stabby thoughts about those experts. Years ago, I stumbled onto passive income streams, also called residual income streams or even royalties. The idea behind passive income streams is that you put in an effort now to create something, and over the years, a small trickle of money comes in without much further effort. I wrote an article on my Rich Soil website about ants and aphids back in 2002. It took me about 2 hours. I may have spent another 2 hours telling folks about it. This was one of my least popular articles. At some point, I stuck a couple of ads on the page, and it consistently brought in about $60 per year every year. That may not sound like a lot, but it has now been 17 years, and I have made $960 from only 4 hours of work. That's $240 per hour. Extrapolating these figures, if you were to work 40 hours per week for a whole year doing this kind of thing, you could make $30,000 per year. But after the first year, you will barely have to do anything. Sounds like a good retirement to me. So you work for 1 year, and now you're earning $30,000 per year. And then you stop working, pretty much. I mean, maybe you'll work just a few hours a year, but for the most part, you stop working, and $30,000 per year continues to come in. Now, granted, for the most part, with passive income streams, they tend to kind of shrink a little bit over the years for whatever reason. And you could go in there and you could do a little bit of polish or something to kind of get it to bump back up or whatever. But to keep the math simple, let's say it stays constant. And that this is the definition of passive income streams. Some of my efforts in this space have never made me a dime. In fact, when I first wrote that article about ants and aphids on my apple tree, I had no thought of it ever bringing in any money. I thought I was just writing a thing that I felt the need to say so I could express myself better. I can point to the article when talking about aphids for the most part. So some of my efforts in this space have never made me a dime. Some of them have needed me to foolishly spend money. Others have made me a little, and a few have made me quite a bit. I think the example I traditionally use is my article about diatomaceous earth. It's not a very big article. It took me a few hours to write. And there have been times when it's brought in thousands of dollars per month. It doesn't bring in so much now for reasons, but that's been probably a quick little article that I wrote that's brought in a significant amount of money. Let's see. As with many things, I think the key is try 100 things. Only 2 of them will work out, but you never know in advance which 2. And I think this is the thing that Jacob has highlighted the most, and Jacob has sent me several emails like, this, it's this, this is everything. Okay, one thing you can be assured of, if you do 0 things, 0 will work out. Okay, I got to give Jacob a chance to, because we just got through giving Jacob a couple of kicks, and then we talk about passive income streams, for which I happen to know Jacob knows a thing or two about. And then, of course, this thing about try 100 things. Okay, Jacob, I'm going to let you have
Let
a
him
chance.
loose.
What do you want to start with, investing or passive income?
It's your choice, man. I have a feeling that it's my chance to go pee now, because you're going to probably talk for 45 minutes.
Yeah. So the investing part, I mean, it looks like gambling, if I may. If you don't have much experience with something, then things tend to look random. It's kind of like how my gardening efforts are currently. I throw some seeds down, and maybe something comes up, maybe something doesn't come up, or the squirrels take my seed, right? So metaphorically, it's sort of like on the same level. Whereas if you sort of get into it, which I think if you are gonna pick that as like as a way to go for your income, then it'll start. Then it will not seem so random anymore. And I think, there's a lot of people want to punt on the investing part. They say that, I'm not interested in doing that because all this financial stuff means nothing to me. But I think if you're actually going to pick that and choose that as a way to make the dollars you need, then I highly recommend people spend like 300 to 1,000 hours learning about it. But once sort of like the information is the knowledge is downloaded into the brain, it doesn't take that long to do anymore. A further point in favor of the investing part is that it's very robust, in a sense that if you put money and effort into it, you are guaranteed to get something back out of it. You're not in competition with anyone. You put $100 in, you get $3 out every year. You put 1,000 in, you get $30 out. And where does that money come from? If you do have the job and you're saving via that, then that's essentially the surplus money. The 80% you're saving, what else can you do with it but invest it, right? So that's where that money comes from. You can also put it into businesses, your own business, or efficiency measures around your house, solar panels, etc. But also eventually you'll reach a point where you can put it into the market and do it that way, and it scales perfectly. For instance, we can't all write. This is called like a fallacy of composition argument I'm making now. But we can't all write an article about AFITs, right? There can really only be one guy with the AFIT article taking in all the money, right? So some of that is kind of subject to the risk of someone else writing a better article and then Google changing the algorithm on you and pointing to that instead, and then you can see it kind of drop rapidly. That's not the stock market, or the bond market doesn't have the same risk as such. So that was kind of like in favor of the investing part. It's certainly I think it's worth taking seriously. And then the other thing was the try 100 things. Only 2 of them will work out. That is true. So in terms of like return on effort, there's very much a Pareto curve, which means that you'll probably make like 95% of your money from 5% of your total efforts. Like if you write 1,000 articles, then 50 of those will provide like most of your income, and the rest will provide almost nothing. That's been my experience there, and I think that holds in general. The problem, or the challenge there, is in the try 100 things is actually super hard. It's hard to remain creative if you keep. It requires a personality, and that'll essentially go on and keep trying things. It's until something works out. And I mean, for instance, since like FIRE, the Financial Independent Retire Early, has sort of become popular in the media. There's like a lot of people starting blogs, and there's this kind of like general blogging rule is that there's this called like the 90-day rule, which essentially that most bloggers shut down after 90 days because they run out of things to say. And because you have like 90 good ideas, and after that's like, what am I going to say now? And the risk is there that, so if like maybe only one of those articles will work out and they make $60 a year on that, say, or I mean, you see what I mean? So you need to have some kind of very exuberant personality to keep trying new things, and that kind of goes back to how what was it, Ferd, the first guy, the $40,000 a year guy. Most people are sort of have been trained into the mindset of doing just one thing. So it's really hard to suddenly begin to become creative and then trying a bunch of different things. It's definitely either. I mean, maybe you're lucky and you never lost it, but maybe you became a working drone and you lost it. In that case, it's gonna be tricky to do it. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's hard. I mean,
I think I could easily fill 5 or 6 books giving people ideas on things that they could do. And,
No, the lists are there, but I mean, it's not that the material is lacking. It's that the person actually trying to do it.
No,
sort of like the talents or whatever, the drive, I think is the word.
I kind of feel like, sure, drive is a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I think you make some very good points about like, okay, 90 days, people are all blogged out. Like, okay, I said everything I have to say, and now I'm looking at that jet ski.
Yeah.
Suddenly.
And then you made like $3 in Google AdSense. It's like, man, 100 years.
and I kind of feel like I can help that person.
Yeah.
I have the ability to guide them into doing something that they're comfortable with, but it's like they got to actually do the work.
Right.
And it's like, and they're going to be like, I've got all the energy to do it. I just don't know what to do. And I kind of feel like, no, not a problem. I can work with that. I can work with that. And it's kind of a funny thing because there's, for example, throughout the year, I'll get 2 emails a week where somebody on Amazon went and bought my deck of cards. And then between Thanksgiving and December the 15th, I'll get those same kind of emails, but I'll get like 30 or 40 a day because people are buying the cards for gifts at Christmas time, and the permaculture playing cards fit into a Christmas stocking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get tons of them. Now, that is, in a sense, that is a in fact it's a residual income stream because we did a Kickstarter, but it's let's call it a passive income stream for a moment. And so I do pretty much nothing, and this money keeps coming in. And we could talk about what a dumbass I am about marking the price too low or whatever, but that's another story for another day. The key is the money keeps coming in. And so now we're talking about like, well, there's all of, well, hey, Paul, you've got superpowers, so you can go and make cards. And it's kind of like, they'll let any dumb fuck make cards. And on top of that, it's kind of like, I kind of feel like to do what I did was nothing special. And to compound it even further, I brought up the idea of making cards in a podcast, and then somebody wrote on Permy shortly after that, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make these cards. And so I even spelled out what would be ideas for 52 cards. And I think I even had like 6 spares in case you didn't like 6 of those ideas. Here's some 6 more. So like I was like spoon feeding this person to make the cards. And like, then when you get to the point that you're doing a Kickstarter, then I'll throw the weight of the empire behind your Kickstarter, and we'll fund your Kickstarter, and we'll fund your cards. And he's like, yay, I'm going to do it. And then I check back in with him, like, I don't know, 5 months later, and he didn't reply to the thread. He didn't reply to my emails to him. He dropped it. I then took the idea to somebody else and said, hey, how about this? Do you want to like do the cards? I'll help you. I'll support you. Yes, I totally do want to do that. I'm going to do it. It's going to be my thing, is making these cards. And then they didn't. And then I went to like, I think 2 other people before I contacted Alexander, and Alexander's like, yes, I'm going to do it, which is the exact same thing I heard from all these other people. And then after about 6 weeks, I think I contacted Alexander and said, how's it going? And his word is, I haven't started yet. And it's like, so then I started like holding his hand with each card. Next thing you know, I've put in as much time as Alexander, and we agreed that it's now a mutual thing. And so I did the Kickstarter. Then when we're all done, we each have an unlimited distribution license. So he can go print up as many cards as he wants and sell them whenever he wants. And then also I've got contacted by people who wanted to make the cards be in other languages. And I said, there you go, Alexander, there's a whole business. He didn't do it. He doesn't have to do it. It's like, that's totally cool. In the meantime, I just went ahead and printed the cards and sold them on Amazon, and I made my own web page and stuff like that. And I've printed. He could print cards too and put them on Amazon too. And so he could sell them for a lower price than I'm selling them for. Of course, I'm selling them for far too low of a price, but again, that's another story. The key is that I now have this passive income stream, and I tried to get other people to do it, but they didn't. And it wasn't due to a lack of creativity or a lack of ideas. It was just lack of gumption.
Internal drive, essentially.
But now I've got this whole other podcast called Mr. Slappy, which Jocelyn fought me tooth and nail to not put this out and to not talk about Mr. Slappy. But now I'm getting tons of feedback about how people love Mr. Slappy. And it's kind of like, a lot of people cannot do something unless they have somebody in their life that is a Mr. Slappy. Somebody who will say, here is the work you're going to be doing for the next hour.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, this is what they were trained to do in school, right? I mean,
I can't, and of course, my whole life has been full of nothing but like, I've got so much in my head of stuff I want to do, and I just don't have enough life in numbers of years to do it all. I'd love to farm out 99% of the stuff that's in my head, but every time I do, people need a lot of my time to tell them all the steps. And it ends up being, I spend more time telling them how than if I just did it myself. And then, even then, they still don't finish the job. They just leave it half done. And so, all right, residual income streams is something, or I should say passive income streams is something where it's like, I think it is a path. And now you're saying spend 300 to 1,000 hours learning about how to invest. So that way, when you do it, then you put in $100 and you get $3 back each year, and you can go and have your $100 back later if you want it. Whereas I have put a lot of money into a lot of investments over my lifetime. Many of them have paid back very, very well. But there have been some where I've gotten nothing back, or where that investment is still rolling and it's still kind of like in the negative. Like if I were to cash out now, I'd get less back in than what I put in.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the difference is that in order to make it on passive income, you can leverage your internal drive. But if there's no internal drive, if a person doesn't have the internal drive, there's nothing to leverage. They're
entirely dependent on Mr. Slappy.
Right.
If there's no Mr. Slappy in their lives, they produce nothing. And I kind of feel like, how do you go and buy that jet ski if there's no Mr. Slappy in your
Well,
life?
there's. I mean, for people who stay in the 40-hour work week, they have a boss that tells them what to do. They have forms to follow. That's essentially where I would say most people. I mean, it's hard to get out of once you're in that mindset, unless you feel stuck. In which case, this is a great way to get out. I mean, this I mean, we're kind of like a. There's also this kind of question: what happens if everybody does this? Doesn't like the economy crash? And the easiest answer is like, well, just not everybody will not do this.
Okay, Jacob Lund Fisker, I have a question for you, and this question is an entirely inappropriate question, so feel free to tell me to fuck off. So, you wrote a book, and your book is about having invested. So therefore, you have investments, and your book is has a passive income stream attached to it. My inappropriate question, for which I should never ask, but I'm going to just throw it out there, and which one gives you more money each month? You can tell me. You don't have to answer.
The book itself. That kind of depends on how you calculate the passive income. I mean, right now they're about even.
Okay, about even.
Yeah,
now,
I mean the book gives about $30,000 a year, which was entirely unexpected. But if you compare it to my blog, for example, which I put 1,000 posts into it and spent 2 years writing it, basically half an hour to an hour each day, that makes about $1,000 to $2,000 a year, depending on what kind of shenanigans Amazon and Google are up to. So you could say the blog was kind of like, no, that's not enough for me. I mean, I consider the book, it's kind of a lucky thing in a sense, since it is one of the better selling ones in that domain. On the other hand, the financial thing, that was like entirely dependable. I could like project like year by year exactly how much I would have. So, but yeah, I mean, if the business income as such, if a royalty, I mean, it can be a lot higher, but it can also be a lot lower. I guess what I'm saying is that the investing path is the robust way. It's a dependable way. The other ones, you're kind of like more trying to roll the die, and you want to roll it as much as possible until something gets up, pays off, something gets up.
For your lifetime up to this point, how many hours have you put into understanding investing?
Well, that's tricky, since I actually ended up leveraging that into an actual finance job also. But before that happened, I had probably what corresponds to like a first year business. Someone who goes to business school for 1 year. It's about what?
So I'm going to say 6,000 hours.
No. It's probably more like 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours.
Because there's 2,000 working hours in a year. If you just work a full-time job, that's 2,000 hours.
I would say 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours. Yeah. Okay. And so and then there's a certain number of hours you're putting in each year to fondle your investments.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, how many hours do you have into writing your book? Just getting it to the point that it exists and you can sell it.
I kind of estimated that to be about 2,000.
About 2,000.
2,000 to write it, about 500 to, put it together, edit it, and test all the margins and all that shit. That was like self-published, so you have to do everything there. So 25, yeah. So
2,500 hours.
Yeah.
And you got 1,000 hours in investing. So it's okay. I thought the numbers were going to be very different, but thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. It sounds like
the thing about investing is that it scales. If you invest like $10,000, you spend 1,000 hours investing for like 3 or 4%, regardless of how much money you have, right? So if you invest $10,000, you spend the same amount of time as if you invested 100,000 or $1 million. So if you don't have very much to invest, it doesn't make sense to spend that much time educating yourself about it. It only makes sense after a certain point. which is also why I mean the standard advice now is just throw everything into index funds and forget about it. I mean, you could in principle spend like 5 hours on it.
Well, one of the things you said earlier was that the amount of income you get each year right now from your book is about the same as what you get from your investments.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, but it sounds like you had to put in 2.5 times more work into your book than into your investments.
Yeah.
Therefore, your answer is the opposite of what I thought the answer would be.
Yeah. But also, I mean, also consider that those are just sort of like coincidentally the same number. I mean, if you go forward 5 years from now, which I can actually do here, if I can sorry, I've switched them around. I have a spreadsheet that projects everything. So as I said, this can be calculated forward pretty accurately. So if we go to the year 2035 or something, then so I will be 60 years old at that time. Then I would expect, if the book still sells at that time, then I'll be getting 6 times as much in investment income as in book income from essentially doing that much now. But it really depends.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a place where I'm going. So give me a moment here while I try to make this point, and that is that, and I thought that the numbers would be different, but I'm going to work with the numbers that you got, and that is that 1,000 hours to put in, plus you got to put money in, but you also got to put money in with publishing too.
Yeah.
But
that was cheap.
let's just talk about the hours. Let's just talk about the hours. It's 1,000 hours to get started in the investing, to be able to do the investing, or 2,500 hours in order to be able to create this book.
If you do it like I do.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in your particular case, now, and I do think that there's so many more variables to talk about, but the one point I want to make right now is that 1,000 hours learning about a system of investing, which I don't know how everybody else feels, but I cannot stand the thought of trying to learn that. It's to me, it would be like oil and water. Even though I've done a fair amount of it investing and I've done fairly well, it's like I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Or 2,500 hours fiddling with stuff that seems super cool to me, which of course whoever's watching this or hearing this now, then they might be like, feel the same way, like 1,000 hours of like learning how investments work versus 2,500 hours of writing about something that they think is super cool. So there's that. The next thing is that I kind of feel like when I have talked to people about passive income streams, there have been a lot of stories that I've heard where people are doing it and they're having success, where it's closer to the thing I talked about, where I put 4 hours into that article. And it's like, they're talking about like, oh yeah, they've put out 20 books and each book represents about a week of effort. Because you think about it, if you want to put up a book on Kindle on something, the bar for Kindle is pretty low. It's like there's a lot of books out there on Kindle. And it's like I can't help but think that if you go and you plunk down your $1.99 or whatever it is to pick up some of these books, it's going to be like $1.99 was about 10 times too much. In fact, I'd kind of like to get paid $20 for having endured reading just the first chapter. And deciding to close the book. But the key is there's a bunch of people who are working the system and they have learned how to whatever, and then they're putting the books out there and they're cranking the books out and they're getting money. And then another thing, the story, one of my most favorite stories of all time about passive income streams is, I believe his name is Jonathan Colton. And he wrote a song that I have listened to probably 50 times, maybe more, over and over and over again. And I just so enjoy this song called Code Monkey. I don't know if there's anybody else who's on this, who's listened to this song. And I haven't listened to the song in probably more than a year. But when I first heard it, it's like I had to hear it 20 more times immediately. And I just love this song. And so what he did is that he was working a job that he apparently didn't particularly care for, but he really loved his music. And so he made a commitment to himself to put out one new song per week and to give it a try to get to the point that, and then my understanding is that now he's got, like, in certain circles, he's become very popular, and now he makes bank off of his music that he's created. But of course, a lot of musicians, it's like, to get musicians to put out like 6 songs over a 6-year period is a bit like pulling teeth. Mm-hmm. But his thing was quantity. Because it's like
different strategies, right?
It's like, if I kind of feel like I heard somebody once, like, say a photographer once say, it's like, okay, you don't need to know anything about photography. Just go out and take 1,000 pictures, and I promise 10 of those pictures that you take are really great, and they're up there with the quality of the 10 best pictures of an excellent photographer. You just did it all just right by chance. Mm. And it's like, plus by the time you get done taking the 1,000th picture, your next picture is probably going to be 20 times better than the first picture you ever took. Just get out there and start clicking. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt like there's a lot of truth in that. And I think that there's a lot of, that behind Jonathan Coulton's thing. And so when we come back to the point that you're making of, like, where basically I think you're saying most people need a Mr. Slappy. And without Mr. Slappy, they can't create anything. Let alone the thing I started this off with by saying, create a connection from AdWords to one of my things where you get a 50% affiliate fee. They can't even create that. They're not even going to type in AdWords in Google to see what the fuck that is. They can't.
It's like dieting, right? I mean, it's simple, but it's not easy. Right? Anyone can lose weight. It's just not going to happen, right?
Okay.
Yeah, different strategies, for example.
You should be aware you're talking to a fat guy right now.
Yeah.
So use your words carefully. The other thing is like,
catch me if you can.
Be careful if you can say that while I'm sitting next to you, because I am a giant. Like, I think it's kind of funny when people meet me. They're like, "Shit, I thought you said you were a giant. I just didn't know you were that giant." I think it is. For people that have met me in person, maybe there's a bunch of people in the chat that could talk about how freaky it is to meet me. I've scared the shit out of some people. They're just like, so be careful what you say about diet. I loves my things that I eats. All right. I want to now move into the thing where I've made a list. And I think this is Shawn and I shouldn't say I made a list. This is definitely Shawn and I made this list. And I think it's an amazing list. And I also think that it's for a lot of people that struggle to be able to produce something without a Mr. Slappy in their life. Yeah, see, there's somebody. Yep, he's a big guy. All right, here come the chats. Oh, Code Monkey has nearly 7 million views on YouTube. Isn't it an amazing song? I just love it. Of course, I'm a former software engineer. I retired from software engineering to be obsessed about permaculture.
Also a former computer engineer.
Yeah. See, that's why Shawn and I can communicate so well. We both
Jonathan Coulton, he wrote the end themes for Portal, didn't he?
He did what?
The end themes for Portal, the end songs.
Oh.
Was that not him?
I don't know.
What is a Portal? Did you say a Portal?
Portal, the game.
Portal.
Yeah.
Portal. What is Portal?
It's some computer game the kids play.
Okay. See, I'm so obsessed with permaculture.
Yeah, he's the guy. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
I don't know if we're breaking cover right now. If I put it on.
We'll probably violate some kind of, because YouTube has this stuff where
I'll try not to sing it then.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the list that Shawn and I made, and I think, and of course, this book. I want to take a moment to say, this book is like 100,000 pages of stuff, which we are attempting to condense down to 200 pages. So we're leaving stuff out. And I do think that when it comes to passive income streams, I could fill 6 books. And so this is but a section a subsection within a section within a chapter of this book. And I still think that, so this is a very condensed list. But here is an abbreviated list of passive income streams, and Shawn's put a footnote in here so you can go see a bigger list.
Yeah, I just posted it in the chat too.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Create web pages with affiliate links or ads. That's basically where I accidentally got started. Write a book. Do you like my book so far? Tip for beginners. Go to some forum and write helpful answers. After a year, massage all of those answers into an ebook. All right, so basically, without Mr. Slappy, all you can do is go to a forum that's got stuff in it that's your kind of thing and be helpful. And then at some point you're like, I'm going to write an ebook, and just copy all your helpful stuff, mash it into a book. Boom, you're done. You accidentally wrote a book over that year. You didn't even know it. Create a DVD-like thing. Have you seen my rocket mass heater DVDs? Stock photography. So with stock photography, you take pictures of stuff, you put it up on a stock photography site, and then every month you get like pennies or dollars or whatever. I've heard from people that like they get $500 a month from pictures they've put up on these stock photography sites. Stock video, similar kind of thing, but video. I once heard of a guy that was 17 years old and he was making like $300,000 a year at the age of 17 because he just did stock video. He started making stock video when he was like 14. So in 3 years, he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from stock video. Be a famous movie star that gets paid in royalties. We know of these stories. Yeah. Or if you can't be a famous movie star that gets paid in royalties, be a mediocre YouTube personality. My YouTube channel doesn't get nearly the money it used to get, and I haven't been putting videos. So YouTube's got a way of like, if you put a video up every day, we will direct people to your YouTube videos. And I don't do that. But there was a guy here who has like 10,000 subscribers. And I have like 75,000 subscribers, but he's got like 10,000 subscribers. But he keeps putting the videos out. And then I think he mentioned in passing that he was getting $1,400 a month for his YouTube videos. And he hasn't even been doing, I don't think he's even been doing it a year. And it's like, and he hasn't kept up with daily. And so it's like, it's amazing how much money you can get by putting videos on YouTube. Hey, here's one. Be a famous rock star that gets you paid in royalties. But if you can't do that, make music and put it up on music sites where folks can download it for $1 or $2. I mean, the story of Jonathan Colton, I think, is a great story. And in fact, that story that I know about Jonathan Colton is a good 4 years old. I'm sure that story is now, way further along than what I recall. But I do know of people that have put up some music here and there, and they get some income. They get like something like $20,000 a year from music that they've put up on a variety of different sites. Connect a perennial AdWords account to an affiliate product. Amazon pays 5 to 8%. Some programs pay 20% to 80%. And I'm going to point out real quick that if you do the affiliate program on Permies and you link to the building a Cobb style rocket mass heater, I'm sure I've got it here somewhere. Is this it? Yeah. Can you see that? Building a Cobb style rocket mass heater, that I've got it set up so that the affiliate program for that is 80%. So if people buy it, you get 80% of the income. You get far more than me. Next item. Create a massive business and hire a freakishly awesome and trustworthy person to run it. So the business keeps going, and then you just get money and you sit in a hammock all day. And it's like the money just keeps coming because you're smart that way, I guess. And as part 2 of this is an important part of that particular strategy, hope that it doesn't turn into an episode of Murder, She Wrote. because I have not seen very many episodes of Murder, She Wrote, but it seemed like that was the foundation of the few that I saw. This person that has a successful business, and he has these other people running it, and they decided, why not kill that guy, and then I can have all the money? Yeah. Okay. Invest money wisely. Note, this is what Jacob is suggesting in his ERE book. And notice how it's invest money wisely.
1,000 hours.
Yeah, that's that 1,000 hours. The wisely is the important part. Make worksheets for teachers. So excellent opportunities for comedy. It'd probably also be excellent opportunities to sneak in little mentions of permaculture things. But apparently there's websites where you could do this, where you could make worksheets and then you put it up on the site, and then teachers will like pay $5 or something. I don't know what they pay to get the worksheet and be able to use it in the classroom. Make sermons for pastors. Super opportunities for comedy. So apparently there's sites where it's like you make a sermon and then the pastors will go and be like, okay, I've given so many sermons over 5 years. I need something fresh. And so then they'll go to the catalog of sermons and then they'll see one that it says like, oh, here's a thing about God and permaculture and how we're all gardeners of the greater world or something. And it's like, oh, I'll try that one. I'll pay $5. And then presto, you got paid. And then maybe there's like, I mean, if you know how many churches there are, there's a lot of churches. And so those guys are looking for some fresh material. You could be writing that fresh material. Make art for t-shirts and other merchandise and put them up on a site that'll give you money for every shirt or thing sold. I know of a lot of people that have done that a little bit, and they've got like several $100s per year coming in from doing it a little bit. And so you don't even need to have artistic ability. In fact, you know, here's a weird thing. I designed the art for the side of the first Permies.com mug. And all I did was I put words at an angle, and I just made lines and lines and lines of words that I thought were cool permaculture phrases. And they were basically like subject lines for stuff at Permies.com. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And later, a real artist came up with a real version for that. And I found out that people preferred my mug over his mug. And so it's like you don't really have to be a real artist to do this. In fact, I should take my design and put it up on a site like this at some point. Maybe there's somebody out there that's an artist that has done that and wants to, do that for me. Or maybe they want to even just take it and do it and make their own money. There's a lot of people who've made t-shirts featuring my stuff, and I tell them to just keep all the money, and they've got income. All right. Find a book that you love that is self-published. Get permission from the author to make a crappy audiobook, complete with a strong recommendation to buy the physical book at each chapter break. Especially good if the book has pictures and tables that will not convey into an audio format, and the message between chapters points that out. Read the book into an MP3 file, sell the audiobook. Now, apparently, there's places where you can read books into audiobook formats, and there's there's a lot of people that do it, but that's work. Whereas the other side that I'm talking about is something where you come up with the audiobook and make the audiobook available, and then you get the royalties from it because of whatever reason. But I think that there's a lot of potential for that. Okay, here's the next one. Give 1,000 things away for free. Videos, articles, podcasts, ebooks. It's so weird, but after 1,000, it is as if you now have mystery income. Good luck, money offers for stuff, and all sorts of money things that you could never have predicted before. It's a bit like magic and impossible to predict. I have to say that I've given away thousands of things with no intent of ever getting money back, and mysteriously, that stuff has turned into money in the strangest ways. All right. I've got one more item on the list. Well, in fact, I'm just going to do it. Be creative. Come up with a dozen things not on this list. All right. Jacob, I suspect that you've given away a mountain of stuff. There's the stuff on your blogs, if nothing else. And then, of course, there's your book, which brings in a certain income. But do you get income from mysterious places that is not direct income from your book, but it's probably caused by your book?
In a way, I mean, what you're talking about here is essentially setting up a network of different people, essentially creating volatility. How to phrase this? It's essentially a clever form of networking. So if you also sort of like spread the message of what you need and what they need, then you can. This is one of those complicated questions.
Okay.
I would say one thing that has happened to me specifically. At one point, I was writing some financial commentary post on my blog, and I said something. I don't know if it was in a post or in a comment, something to the effect of, if only Wall Street hired more physicists, then the financial crisis wouldn't have happened. And going kind of like back to what you said about hating reading finance, I used to love reading finance stuff, and it was kind of on my bucket list to work in finance. And so I made some kind of side comment in that regard, and then I get someone actually commented back on that. Well, if you're really interested in that, I can maybe make that happen. And that was after me because I was tired of physics. I was talking to finance headhunters, but failing utterly to get sort of like to the next step. So, well, who could actually make that happen? Are you interested? Yeah, I'm interested. So I think it was actually shortly after I stopped blogging. I actually got like a full-time position in a financial company where I worked for a few years, and that was strictly due to the blogging efforts.
You guys keep going. I gotta run away for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
So I'll just kind of like should we put this one on hold?
No, we could talk about that.
Okay.
Now we say you're on Paul's podcast, and he's not there to say you can't say anything.
I can say anything I want now.
But I think
knowing a lot. I mean, having this like network on the forum I've developed. I mean, it's almost like you have connections in strange places all over the world.
It's.
And I mean, essentially, we visited people elsewhere. People have visited us. Try different things. I've tried to ride a motorcycle, for example. I mean, I've showed another dude who came here how to plane with a hand plane. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just simply from having this organization, so to speak, or the network, and it's okay. Sorry.
I've found it really interesting too, just as I've kind of started on my journey and as I've started to get my name out there a bit more, and like the number of things that just come out of the blue, and it's like, wait, you're just gonna do this thing for me, or give this thing to me, or send this thing to me, or like you want me to come stay at your place sometime? Like, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great willingness to help other people, actually, if you feel like they want to hear what you say. I mean, it's the same thing on all kinds of forums, right? You can go in and ask a question. People will like freely provide their expertise in that regard.
Yeah, well, and I think about all the cool people who have like taken a bunch of their free time to like come and give us advice on our book, and like there's people who have spent many hours like reading through and saying, oh, this could be improved, this is awesome, this could be better. And it's like, we haven't paid any of them. They just they're interested and excited and want to help. And it's really cool to get to know people in that way too.
So,
And so I think that giving a lot of things away for free, I mean, there's a lot of things to that, right?
yeah, I mean, it's
and one of the things that Paul and I talked about as we were writing this paragraph, oh, Paul's back now, is that one of the cool things is that like Paul gives away his podcasts for free, and his podcasts is how I got to know Paul. And so because Paul gave away podcasts, he eventually ended up finding someone to work on this book with.
Which I wouldn't have written this book without Shawn.
The giving things away for free also, I mean, it kind of serves. I mean, for instance, in my case, I kind of consider the blog posts, which are obviously free, to be sort of like the advertising for the forum, which again is then like the advertising for the book, and then I charge for the book, but the rest is free in that sense.
Yeah.
But in order to have mystery income, you have to have something somewhere that somehow converts, whether it's a product or whether it's like your person being able to work somewhere. You know, like if, for instance, suppose you're like a famous woodworker or something, you give advice away for free on the internet, then you'll probably expect people to solicit offers like, can you come work on this, just from having done that. And then you'd like be giving away your time instead. But there needs to be some way to convert at some point. I mean, another way of putting it, can't be anonymous.
Yeah,
for the system work.
I think that because you're selling your book, and I mean, there's the income that comes from your book, but I'm going to speculate that there are speaking gigs that you've done where you've gotten paid. There have been maybe speaking gigs that you've done where you've not gotten paid, but people brought you pie. I don't know if it happens to me. I go out and I speak for free, but people somehow bring me pie. I get I'll have 3 pies where I'm speaking from 3 different people.
Okay. I have gotten fed. Yeah.
There's also the whole thing where it's like, okay, I own land, and there have been people that have come here and they have worked for like 2 weeks and they have a full-time job somewhere, and that was their entire vacation for the year to come here and help me for 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't pay them anything. And so it's kind of like, wow, what was up with that? And it's like, so effectively by giving away something for free, I kind of got paid, kind of, not really, but kind of. So there's, I don't know, I feel like there is a long list of things from which I have benefited. Or another one is like, okay, then I give a whole bunch of stuff away for free for years and years and years and years. And then I do a Kickstarter and I get like $100,000. And it's like, I kind of feel like probably 70% of those people were people that got something for free. Yeah. And they're like, I like your stuff. I'll give you
Yeah.
So, whereas if I hadn't been giving stuff away for free, I probably would have made much, much, much less.
I think probably the give 1,000 things away for free is probably the most important thing on this entire list. Like, I think without that one, the other things become much harder. I mean, not just in terms of like capitalizing in that sense, but also getting through sticking points.
I think another thing is, you said like, okay, you wrote this book and you're surprised at how people are loving your book more than you expected them to love it.
Oh yeah, I expected to sell something between 30 copies.
So it turned out to be that you needed to put out this book, you wrote the book, you put it out there, and you thought it might bring in a certain amount of money, but it actually brought in far, far more. And I think part of it is that it turned out that you have a talent. There's something to you, whether it's a talent with writing the English language or expressing stuff in general, or this particular flavor of gobbledygook. And it stood the test of time as well. It continues to sell well, even though you wrote it a long time ago. And so it's kind of like whatever it is. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm not talented. I don't have those talents. And so in which case you're going to, put some stuff out and it's not going to do nearly as well. And it's kind of like because you don't have the whatever it is that Jacob Lund Fisker had. And so I guess
to put two comments about the book is like the first thing was that I put 2,500 hours into it, which is way more than authors typically put into their books. So there's a certain, it's hard to make a better one, so to speak. It requires someone else to do pretty much the same thing but better. And the second thing is I would never have written the book if I weren't financially independent already, because it would simply be too much work. I wouldn't have had the time for it. So one kind of unlocks the other.
Okay. So Shawn, when we're all done with our Kickstarter and we've sent out the last book, how many hours do you believe that you would have put into our book?
Somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500.
Okay. I think I'm about this. I will have ended up at about the same. And so we will truly been put in the same amount of time into this. But the other thing is that if I had whatever it takes to do this kind of stuff and to work on this particular book, and I did it without Shawn, I think I probably would have pulled it off with 2,000 hours worth of work. But at the same time, I think that I could have done the earlier thing that Shawn and I originally were going to do, where it's like I could have put in something on the order of 200 hours worth of work to just massage articles I'd already written to make it into a good enough book format to, do pretty good. And even further, I think that there's articles like the one that I wrote in 2 hours. I could take a bunch of articles that I've written and other things like that, for which I might have a total cumulative of 40 hours of having written articles, and then spend 20 hours gluing those together to put together an ebook. And I think that I could probably do all right, and it would be a residual income stream. The point is that I'm getting at is that it's part of the thing that we're trying to get over is the hurdle of not having a Mr. Slappy in your world and writing this book. But I suspect that you will be in a similar position that I'm in, where it's like, I need to write the book, not so much because of the income that will come from it, but because I'm tired of talking to dumb fucks that don't seem to understand what I say, because I'll try to be talking, I'll be trying to say a thing that's going to take me a half an hour to say the thing. Mm-hmm. And I get about 10 seconds into it and they fucking interrupt me. And it's like, you ask a fucking question. If you could just shut the fuck up for 5 minutes, I'll tell you something, all right? But they can't. They can't shut their fucking pie hole for 2 minutes. So it's like you can never tell them. But if you write a book, now you can finally express the thing that you're trying to express to this person and say, like, look, I don't want to talk to you. Read the fucking book, okay? And so what I'm saying is you didn't write the book in order to be, to make money, to get $30,000 a year coming from the book. You wrote the book because you had a thing in your head and you needed to get it out. And whenever somebody asked you, you try to explain them, but they won't let you explain it.
It's pretty much like a form of closure or catharsis,
There you go. There you go. And so what you got to do is, if you don't have a Mr. Slappy in your life, you need to write something. You need somebody who just simply pisses you off. And you need to tell them why they're so damn wrong. Now you can write a book. All right. I'm back. I'm sorry. Should we continue on with this chapter?
Let's keep going.
Okay. The next section of this chapter is called The Beer Plan. Oh, sure, Jacob's ERE and Rob's mortgage-free are genius. And yet I just can't leave well enough alone. I now present to you my plan that will allow you to achieve Gerthood without a lot of sacrifice involved. I call it Better Extreme Early Retirement. Better, so it spells beer. Better Extreme Early Retirement. You know it's better because the acronym spells something. And I predict more people will like it for mysterious subliminal reasons. So this is not the same as ERE, Jacob's plan. This is better. and I rearranged the letters. Better extreme early retirement. The beer plan goes as follows. Keep your working job. For 2 hours every week, do something that you enjoy doing that might turn into a passive income stream. After doing this for a while, you might find that you get to a point where the amount of money you have coming in from passive income streams is greater than your monthly expenses. Since you've then effectively been earning a double income, you've saved up a lot of money for a grub stake to buy your land. Perhaps now is the perfect time to buy your land. Now, if you're not into the mortgage-free shack approach, just keep doing what you were doing and you'll continue to save a bunch of money. Using this money, you can go the route of building the small house on your land and then adding onto it later. Or you can keep saving up and then just build your house. Or if you don't feel like building a house, maybe you can save up enough money to the point where you can just pay someone else to do it for you. The end game of the beer plan is to have land with a home and a permaculture garden. You get there because of passive income streams. The home and the garden make it so your annual expenses drop to nearly zero. But your passive income streams keep paying. It is possible that your income becomes 10 times greater than your expenses. So I guess you don't need that day job anymore. All right, Jacob, I release you. You can say things.
Okay, like the danger here is that as income goes up, people start spending more of it. So there needs to be some plan and some discipline for sure. I mean, even with like a normal salaried job, people tend to scale up. The way to get rich in this country is essentially to keep living like a student, but while you start making money and developing more other kinds of income, but then get better at living like a student. So you don't live in a dorm and eat ramen or ramen, however you pronounce it. You learn how to cook. You learn how to apply resources more effectively and develop a better life, but stay at the same expense level. And then the difference between those two, that's what you spend on your house, your site.
So before buying this land, I had a lot of money in the bank, and I had a lot of income coming in from passive income streams, and it was coming in way faster than I could spend it. And so I had money, and I could buy anything. And in fact, it got to a point where I needed a new vehicle, and I just went down and bought one.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had that level of money in the bank, so I don't know. I think there is truth to what you're saying. A lot of people, they'll get their income up to like maybe $600,000 a year, and they're barely getting by because they bought this large house with a large mortgage, and they've got 8 different vehicles that are all very expensive, and who knows what else, and there's the yacht payment and whatnot. So yeah, you're right. They chose paths that lead us, and it's kind of like I guess I didn't suffer from that, and maybe it's a fluke. Maybe I'm a weirdo. I mean, I am a guy who wears overalls every day, and there's a lot of people, and I find my overalls have superpowers. They repel people who think fashion is important. Yeah, it's a nice
I dressed up for the occasion. Yeah, I usually wear this coveralls, insulated coveralls from refrigerator. Cooler wear, I think it's called. But yeah, I figured we wouldn't want to scare the normal people away,
Though I suppose there might be some people whereas I'm obsessed with permaculture, there might be other people that are obsessed with travel. That can eat up a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know, they're obsessed with owning large quantities of gemstones or jewelry or something. Mm-hmm. That's pretty expensive stuff. I don't know. I imagine that there's all kinds of ways that you could drugs. I'm not interested in drugs.
Yeah.
My understanding is from watching movies that that could be a very expensive thing.
But there's always like a more expensive consumer version of pretty much everything that you use daily. You can buy a more expensive car that does pretty much the same, and once you have that, you can buy one that's a little bit more expensive. And the important thing there is not so much that it's better, but that it's more expensive. It's a positional good. You use it to show off, right? Most goods are like that, and that's a big problem. Is that say like if it's clothes, you buy a fancier shirt or something, but now your pants look shabby, so now you need better pants, but now your shirt looks shabby, so you kind of like go all the way up. So there's like no limit to what people can be induced into, like pissing their money away on.
So now I'm obsessed with permaculture, and I own land, and so now I just take everything I've got coming in and I put it right back out into trying to develop new wonderful permaculture things. But okay, so that's another story for another day. The important thing is that I kind of feel like this is a plan. The beer plan is not with investing, and in fact, the idea is keep your day job, dabble with things that might turn into passive income streams, and try it out. See if you can find some things that kind of get some stuff started, and then transition, basically using some of the elements from ERE and some of the elements from mortgage free, transition to the point of Gertitude is where you're heading towards. And then it's like once you get there, then of course your passive income streams will continue to produce. So then you're sitting on your plot doing your thing, and you've already got this money coming in every month for which you might have trouble finding a way to spend it. Mm-hmm. So that's the beer plan. Ta-da!
Yeah, I mean it's a normal endpoint actually. I mean that is where people tend to go if they kind of curb their spending enthusiasm. It will happen.
If people will spend and spend and spend as much as they make, then of course I do think that's going to not work no matter what you do. But I guess on the other end, if you do try it out, then you'll actually improve your income streams faster. So like if you've got a full-time job, 40 hours a week, and then you spend another 2 hours a week creating passive income streams, then there might be a point when you're making 10 times more money each year than if you just stayed with the job. And so you could buy more expensive things, I guess. But you can still retire early. I mean, that's another way of doing it too, is it's like if you just do the passive income stream thing, and then you get to the point that the amount of money that's coming in from your passive income streams is 3 times more than what you're making from your job, why would you continue with your job? I mean,
it's kind of like the often say that the worst thing that can happen if you start saving money is that you'll end up with a lot of money in your bank account and you don't know what to spend them on. I mean, it's a similar. I mean, just try it.
Right. I think it's my impression that a lot of people go to work every day because they have to. Mm-hmm. And I think all three of us and everybody listening has had a point in their life where they went to a job 5 days a week because they had to. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like a big part of this book, what I am trying to do, and what Shawn and I said earlier, is like, can we tell a story, weave a tale throughout this book in such a way that when a person goes to that exact same job after reading the book, it's not because they have to, but it's because it's a part of their strategy.
I mean, now it becomes optional.
Yes. And so rather than it being an ulcer fest going to their job, rather than being their job is a soul draining experience, just by reading this book, I hope that same job becomes a soul building experience because it's part of a greater strategy. Mm. All right, let's move on to the next section. A clever recipe for more luxuriant living at half the cost. That doesn't work out to an acronym for anything, but all right. The following recipe is a quick way to solve more than half of the problems we are concerned with in this book. It also reduces expenses by half or more, and Okay. All right. So I could hear all of that. Is Jacob being dancing on his chair? Is Jacob
Squeaky
dancing on his
floor.
chair again? You have a mute button over there, buddy?
I do.
Okay. All right. The following recipe is a quick way to solve more than half of the problems we're concerned with in this book. It also reduces expenses by half or more, and simultaneously, universally, dramatically improves luxury. This recipe also has an overwhelming downside. The solutions to the downside will not fit in this book. I have dedicated an enormous part of my life to trying to solve this one massive problem so that we can all harvest the magnificent benefits. Pause for effect. People avoid living with each other because there's just too much drama. If there was a big volume knob on drama, we could turn it from a 9 down to less than 1. What remains is that we could live with 20 other people in a far more luxuriant environment, and it would cost less than half as much as living alone. For starters, rent of a house or land could be split by 20 people. Nearly any item you buy, whether it be a couch, an electric tractor, or a jigsaw puzzle, could be split by 20 people. And whenever something breaks, it's like having a 95% off coupon on repairs. And 95% of the time, the item magically repairs itself. Childcare could be shared. Food costs could be reduced through bulk ordering of food. And it's also more likely to be consumed before it goes bad. As an example, when I lived in a household with 10, where the food was all shared, the cost per person per month for all organic food, including meat, was only $108. The benefits are profound. Community living is a magnificent, radically deviant, phenomenally effective financial strategy, possibly for experts only until we develop better recipes to reduce drama. Later in this book, we'll talk more about the advantages of community living under one roof, and we'll also talk about a model for a distributed community on acreage for when you like people, but not enough to live with them in the same house. That concludes this chapter. Okay, all right. So,
Yeah.
this is the part where you guys tell me, yes, I'm right. Of course, Shawn believes I'm right because he questioned every word I wrote.
I mean, the drama part is definitely an issue. Many communes fail for that reason. So if that can be solved, then that's a no-brainer. Actually, when I went to grad school,
is the benefit there? Is the benefit that I mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So he has some like other ways to do it, or alternatives. So like when I went to grad school, I lived in a dorm with 18 other people. So we each had our own cubby hole, essentially, with a bed. It was kind of like a tiny house in the sense that it was very well designed, so lots of storage for suitcases, etc. And there were, I think, 3 shared showers and 4 toilets or something. And the cost was like really low. So that's, I mean, but like for like non-students, that's not really a possibility unless, say, like a group takes over a motel. I mean, there was a way for people to get away from each other, so there was not much drama. Another problem with it was the what I call the kitchen counter effect, and that is if just 1 or 2 persons stop cleaning up the kitchen counter, then essentially it all goes to hell, because then everybody else thinks, why should I bother? And that is probably like the fundamental problem to communal living. And the solution they had there was essentially that the complex hired a cleaning person to come in. Like, I think the kitchen was done like every other day, in all the individual rooms, and there was like really no choice in this. It was like part of the rent were cleaned out like once a month, so that kept the standard essentially.
Should have just got him to write our other chapter. It looks like he got most of the material.
Well,
so what most people don't see is that as Jacob was explaining this problem of problems in the kitchen, Paul and I were both nodding our heads like, yes, yes, this is the problem.
I think that the chapter that comes later is called "How to Get 20 People to Live Under One Roof Without Stabbing Each Other," and then the first section title is "The Knives Are Stored in the Kitchen."
Right. Okay. Oh, so that is what that was about. Okay.
Yeah, because it's the kitchen is. But I mean, like, you know, this is something that's going to take a 40-volume set of books to try to even start to just talk about the problems and how we might possibly solve them. And like, you know, so what I've done here is I want to just throw out the idea that it's like you can cut your expenses in half right out of the gate, except that there's this drama issue. And then you say something like adults won't do it. This is for college kids. And I kind of feel like, no,
because most adults don't have the skills. I mean, that's the...
I've been to a lot of intentional communities where it's adults giving it a try. And granted, it's not working. Now, there are some where it is working. And the way that you could tell if it's working is, do they have people that have been there longer than 2 years? That's the metric. And so, but there are places where people have been there for longer than 2 years, where like most of the population is more than 2 years old, but they're very rare. And then there's a bunch of places where like the community has been there for longer than 2 years, but the people that are living there, no one's been there for 2 years. And it's like the community might be 15 years old, but no one's been there longer than 2 years.
Well, because that's essentially the grad student housing, right? It's like rotating.
No, this is intentional.
No, but it's similar, right? Yeah.
This is intentional community. And the other thing is, when you talk about like 4 people sharing a place, it's like there is that one house out of 20 where it's like they all rented the place their freshman year, and then they stopped renting. The same people stopped renting the place when they all graduated. And so it's 1 out of 20 where these people did get along and it did work out.
Right.
And it's like, and we can see some of it in an episode of Friends. But the key is that it's like, you know, when we talk about the drama, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, it's only you. And it's kind of like, no, we all kind of did this, where we all, you know, rented a place or we did something in college to make our expenses lower. And then at the same time, there's such a thing as, I'm sure we've all heard of divorce. We've heard of it. I mean, the fact that it's a word shows that there's at least one person who's experienced it. Well, 2 technically, but and it's like, at the same time, I think we've all met some people that have been through divorce, if it's not that we've been through it ourselves. Oh, and then at the same time, there's such a thing as prison. I'm sure you've heard of it. And so in which case prison, a lot of the people that are in there, it's like they did something unkind to somebody else. And that's why it turned out there was a law against it. And so they went to prison. So it's like, it's not a unique idea that when you bring people together, there's challenges. But again, 47-volume set of books to try to even discuss this. And we're just trying to talk about like ways to reduce your expenses.
Yeah, I mean,
just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there as a way, but you're not going to do it. We know you're not going to do it because of the drama factor.
Another common way is multi-generational family arrangement.
It's true.
So that's probably going to become more common. I mean,
some
cultures it's the default, and in some the opposite is the default. So I think that's going to be like a transition there.
And so, Jacob, you live with your mom and dad right now?
No.
No. Okay, Shawn, you live with your mom and dad right now?
No, I don't.
No. I don't live with my mom and dad. I know. I wonder how many people that are like in the chat thing, how many of them live with their mom and dad right now? So it's like, but I agree with you.
I mean,
there are families that are generational, and there are places in the world where it is happening generational. In the United States, it's pretty rare, and I think that's a whole nother conversation for another day. And I'm sure the word millennial will come up more than once.
And the last thing instead of like everybody living under the same house, you can also connect the neighborhood, so to speak. It kind of goes back to the like give things away for free. If you start giving things away for free to your neighbors, then you might eventually discover that you don't all need to own your own lawnmower. You can borrow each other's, you know, things like that.
I gotta, okay, okay, you've pushed a button, so now I have to make whiny sounds. It's what I do. But my experience is that if you loan out your lawnmower, in my case, I used to loan out my tractor, and then my tractor would come back needing like welding work done on it to repair.
Right, yeah.
And then it's like they weren't willing to pay for it or do it or whatever, so I had to weld it back together. And so I kind of feel like there's stuff that I'm perfectly comfortable giving away, and then there's stuff where it's like, it's like the whole concept of no good deed goes unpunished.
Right.
You know, and it's like, so it's like I got to kind of weave where I'm comfortable giving things away, but you're right and you're wrong.
I mean, it depends on the person. It's not the tractor. It's the person you loan the tractor to. Right? So you start out small, right? You go and you give people cookies. That's not actually because you're nice in a sense. It's turning a little sociopathic. That's actually a test to see if they'll give you cookies back. Right. Okay. And so you sort of build the relationships like that, and then you build this kind of complex neighborhood where people look out for each other.
Those exist. I mean, they exist.
Yeah. I live in one now. Yeah.
It's more common that your neighborhood is going to be something where you go and you give, and now that